Orange County Citizens Review Board. I'm going to call the meeting of October 16th, 2023 to order. All rise and pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Well, first of all, I want to thank you all for waiting. I've been in a conference for the last 3 days, and not only did I have to drive from Lake Buena Vista and Orange County traffic, my brain is pretty much mush after sitting in a chair for 8 hours. So I have to do, what, 3 more hours here? but we're ready to go. We're going to have a roll call by the clerk.
Member Batchelor. Member Jackson. Member De La Portilla. Member Weinsberg. Member Callan. Member Arias. Member Wynn.
Here.
Chair Hardage.
Here.
Vice Chair Shira. Member Grammer.
Here.
Member Baga.
Here.
Member O'Neill. Member Staccardo. Member Adamson Prophet. Member Riley. You have quorum.
I've been corrected. Charter review, for the record. Okay, we're now at a section where we generally have comments from the chair and vice chair. I just have a few brief comments today. Basically, in the way I have tried to structure this meeting is that we're functioning in really 3 or 4 different sections. I usually see 4. The first part of this was listening to public comments and deciding what to place into committees. The second was actually placing things into committees and having those committees deliberate on them. The fourth section in my way of running the meeting is that those committees would then bring items back to the board for this board to deliberate on. And the fourth is actually us voting on them and getting them back out to the public. We're getting pretty close to where committees will start to bring items back to us for deliberation. So over the next 30 days between now and our next meeting, you can expect me to start meetings with staff to begin to discuss how those meetings would go and how we will handle things as they come back from committee. When we have board member comments at the end of this meeting, I would really appreciate if you all would give me your comments as to how you would like to see deliberation on items that come out of committees, and if someone was on the CRC previously, if you'll let me know how those meetings went, and then that'll help frame my perspective as I meet with staff in the next 30 days. Secondly, I want to thank our committee chairs. They participated in something that we consider very, very important, and that's getting our message out to the public. We had a successful press conference. All of our committee chairs were there, and I really appreciate that. Board member Weinsberg also attended with us. I really appreciate her being there. We'll have at least one more of those press conferences, and that's because even though we've announced these meetings many times, there are still people in the public that don't know exactly what we're doing, actually probably a lot. So the next press conference will be to discuss the items that committees have brought back to this board, and that'll give the general public a chance to see what we'll be deliberating about. There may or may not be a fourth one, a third one, but if there's a third one, it would be to announce the things that we plan to place on the ballot for voters or not place on the ballot for voters. So one way or the other, there'll be at least one more and possibly 2. And when you give we're now going to, we have an invited guest. We're going to listen to that invited guest first. It is our esteemed Commissioner Wilson. Please come forward. Come on, give it up. Yes, we're delighted to have you. And also I want to say we really appreciate you hosting this meeting. It's an honor. We really look forward to being out in your part of the county.
Testing, testing. Okay, thank you so much.
There you
I appreciate the invitation. I appreciate you all coming out here. I know that this community cares so much and that you all care so much. So this, to me, feels like the convergence of the greatest minds yet. Good evening, everyone. Hope you're doing well. I apologize for the traffic in the area, but as we dive into some of the things that you're taking a look at, I want to point out that you're smack dab in the West Windermere Rural Settlement right now. Just let that sink in. Smack dab in the West Windermere Rural Settlement right now. I know that you all know this, but we have a lot of followers here today. We've definitely garnered some new attention trying to make sure that people are following your work. So I want to make sure that as I address you, I address the public also in reiterating that what you're doing right now and the work that you bring forward, the potential amendments, they don't go straight to the charter. I know sometimes it feels like the weight of that is on you. But the good news is that you have the support of staff, you have legal counsel to help vet, and then once you vet it and it goes to the people. And the reason why I love this process is it feels like the most democratic thing we've got going. It is, you all don't get campaign funding up here. You all are appointees from all over that do all things in your professional lives. And for me, it feels so boots on the ground, out in our communities, democratic. So I want to make sure that when you would look at these potential amendments and you feel as though the status quo is the best option, I challenge you to think about things differently. I challenge you to be the person that can see a little bit into the future to see what is next that we need, because there are things that we've been doing that I would argue have not been working. I also really quickly wanted to make sure that I addressed our relationship as county commissioners with our annexed or municipal citizens. And when I say that, I think I overheard at some point during one of the discussions, oh, it's not in their jurisdiction once they're annexed or once they're a municipal citizen. But for my residents that live in Windermere, Oakland, Winter Garden, fully, all three of those fully, I am on their ballot, but so is their city commissioner. And what my point to you would be is that we all take care of those people. And so it's really important, I think, that misconception. There are times we work a lot harder, actually, for our municipal residents because we have to enter into joint planning agreements, memorandums of understanding with the local municipality. And so those things continue to be part of our caretaking of our residents. The example that I was thinking about, actually, when talking to a resident who was a municipal resident, is that they I apologize because I got a whole stack of papers up here. That you can be a Winter Garden resident and the road in front of your house be an Orange County road, and the stray dog found on your street that day will be taken care of by Orange County Animal Services that evening. We'll work closely with the water department to figure out what's going on. But that programming all works in conjunction. So I think it's really important that we don't discount that if you're looking at the populations and census tracts. Now, that being said, I know it sounds like I'm making an argument against myself because you've heard that I probably have the most of growth in my area of unincorporated District 1. That being said, those residents see themselves, their identity is very much tied to what's on their address. So they think they're in Winter Garden, they think they're in Windermere because their address says that. And that is, as we know, a federal postal designation. And sometimes my office is the office that helps them, guide them through who actually does provide them with their services. So when you came in, you probably found a little manila folder. I put together a packet of some stuff that I really wanted to, to offer you to help try to get a kind of a better feel for what my observations have been about some of the things you all have been discussing. So in the random sampling in your packet, or in your package, there's a random sampling, or actually it wasn't random. I just went back as far as I could to, I think, February for a long-range agenda, because I thought it was important that you take a look at that and see how many of those cases are in District 1. But the other part that I think is important is to look at how many of those cases are substantial changes and amendments to the comprehensive plan. So what that tells you is when someone says we don't need to add an urban boundary or a rural boundary, that potentially an additional layer would be very beneficial. If you see this many changes just in a single district within a couple months, then I think it tells you something about the what I feel like my residents are trying daily to raise as a concern. I did ask our planning department to also pull a couple numbers, and I wanted to let you all know in this district we had new applications, 120 new applications for development since January 2023. I've held 26 community meetings. There's 2 in the next, I think, 2 weeks. There's 108 DRC cases. So the volume is real. And I only tell you that in the larger scope of looking at how we're making residents here feel like development is predictable for them. And what does that mean to them? So if you continue to look through your packet, you'll see what the existing comprehensive plan established as an urban service area. What that means is, and I have residents that are in the room right now, that the residents outside of that urban service area can't get county services. They can't get county sewer, they can't get county water unless they came in with some large development plan. So even though they get the impacts from this growth, they don't get the services. And it does nothing to actually protect them on the other side. I continue to support your analysis of the board-appointed county attorney. Another item that you'll find in your packet is actually a conversation that I had at some point with the county attorney about a charter amendment that was passed in 2020 and what was happening next. You'll see that memo back was addressed to me, I think it maybe the first few months of 2022, and with all due respect to the county attorney's office, they're very busy, but it promised that this would be something coming back to the board. I have yet to hear anything, and it was something that the charter actually took up and passed, and over 85% of our voting citizens believed in this amendment. So having the ability to have a county attorney that actually, or an attorney that supports the governing documents, the documents you are working on right now, is critical to the process of providing some security in what those documents mean. I think as you move through your little packet there, I think I want to make sure you understand that we are, I'm very encouraged, I think, with the discussion about separation of powers or what that would look like. I think don't rule out the idea that the separation of powers issue can be thought of in organizational ways. I know that there was some discussion about how complicated things get when we look at an org chart, but I added an org chart to your file because I wanted to make sure you saw that sometimes the departments that feel like the most impactful to our citizens are a little bit off limits within that org chart. And so understanding better how to bring some balance to that, I think, is very, very helpful. I'm not sure if dismantling the strong mayor form of government is the way to go. I think that's something that you all can talk about. I think it has its benefits, right? We understand that we have electorate from the top to the bottom. I will tell you that part of my frustration moving through my last couple of years in office has been the inability to discuss policy with the person that drives the policy, and the inability to really be able to talk about things that are very geographically specific to my residents because of sunshine. Now, I know I've heard, why don't you have more sunshine meetings? And I think that's a fair question, but I also think that if we know policy is driven out of the mayor's office, that to be able to have the legislative branch discuss things with the executive branch would be very, very helpful in the global sense, not just a case at a time, where we would have to do it for sunshine. And I apologize, I have a tickle in my throat. All right, I am here for questions. I think that the other part that I really wanted to maybe present when I thought about what happens when we go to follow a case that's traveling sort of through the process, development process. Those cases are quasi-judicial in nature, which means that the county commission sits as a judgment, a body in judgment. And so we are, held to a standard of making sure that if we have ex parte communications, which means if we're meeting with people outside of the actual hearing, that we disclose that. And so one of the things I do at the beginning of those hearings is I say, I had the opportunity to meet with the applicant. I had the opportunity to meet with the residents. I had an opportunity to meet with the HOA. And then I make sure that we're all on the same page about that disclosure. I would say there have been many examples of traveling with my community through a development process, getting to a public hearing, and seeing on that day lobbying bodies moving around the floor and making sure that they are heard. And so despite the fact that I get down there and I disclose it, there's no obligation for anybody else to disclose who they're talking to before they make a vote, because sometimes those votes are taken without discussion, right? They listen to the discussion, the county commissioner makes a motion, and oftentimes, in my case, you can get a second, but it's not a unanimous or it's not a majority. And, you know, if you've been to one of our meetings and you know there are 200 people there that feel a certain way, and we've gone through the process of trying to discuss things with the developer and we're at a stalemate, that's when we offer some conditions of approval. And all I need is some support from that board. If they don't support, then it's important for us to know why. And is it because that the last person in their ear happened to be somebody paid to be in their ear? Right now, there's no requirement. And I think that, without lobbing at you a new charter amendment idea, I think it's an easy one. I think they just register who's seen them and what case it was about, and then they just close it prior to that public hearing. And I think that way there's a better understanding, at least in my community or any of these communities, who they're listening to. Because if they haven't been to the public community meetings, and they haven't been to BZA, then who are they listening to? I am here for you all for any questions you might have about any of the topics that you're reviewing. I know that this is an in-depth process, but I think you're doing a great job. And I think that the outcome is going to be really good. The minds here, I think there's enough really good analysis to bring forward, but I think it's going to be some really important updates. But don't shy back from things because of the state and the state's actions. We have to take care of our people. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think we will allow a few minutes for questions. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, except for to say that I support, I think, the continued exploration of all the, thank you, Mike. Anna, history. I support all of the exploration. I think the part that I want to make sure that you all continue to pursue are the things that we know separate us. I think local government is such a great position because we're the closest to the people. And so representative districts are fantastic. You don't want at-large commissioners, right? We want the entire community to be able to pick out who their commissioner is. But then what happens when that district commissioner, who has been meeting with constituents, residents over a period of time, has no ability, once they get to an actual hearing, to make a difference, whether it's a rezoning or even a long-term transportation plan update? Because I can't walk down the hallway and let the person who is driving the policy know what's happening out here. And the mayor does a great job with the things that he is focused on, but his focus is very wide. District commissioners go very deep. And we spend a lot of time working on very complex problems. We're out looking at crosswalks. We are in HOAs. We're trying to figure out how to make sure people are safely getting their kids to school. But that stuff is all hard to encapsulate once we get back to a board meeting, and we don't have the ability just to casually have those conversations when they're about things that we might vote on. And so, I would encourage you to continue exploring that division of powers and how to make sure that the executive branch and the legislative branch can still keep local government as close to the people as it should be.
Thank you. We can allow for a few questions, brief questions from the board. I have, I'm going to try to go in order. I see Angel Della Patilla,
Yes.
and then I see Ms. Prophet, I believe, and Ms. Wynn.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner, I've got a question. You mentioned the org chart with the in our discussion. I chair the committee on government structure, and we're looking at separation of powers and other things. But you mentioned the org chart. The org chart is still a function of the office of the mayor of the executive branch.
Right.
You said there's a disconnect between the commission and the org chart here. What do you What would you like to see?
So I think that in my experience, we have amazing staff, we have amazing department heads. So I want to make sure I'm qualifying all of this because I think they do a great job. But having something as broadly needed and as broadly necessary to every district as communications under the mayor's chief of staff, even if you have a great I have a great relationship with them. It doesn't mean that that is an ideal establishment of an organizational structure in an equitable way. And so when there is, limited resources and unlimited needs, we kind of need a very structured, equitable org chart. And so when you look at the org chart that I slipped in there and you sort of see that offshoot, I would say communications is the one that I feel should be, within that line of the county administrator. I have, really fortunately good relationship with our administrators and feel like I can go to them and ask, can I get some help on this or can we talk about this? It is a little bit of an up jog to go through a different office in order to get there, and especially that office, I have to be really careful about sunshine and I have to be careful about, that approach. The Office of Economic Development and Tourism Trade, I don't think, the people in this room are all savvy. You probably were watching the TDT hearings and discussions. As commissioners, we learned about the TDT task force the day the letter went out to the media. So, that is two of these that are in that org chart underneath the chief of staff that I feel like you all would have been better served as residents. The community would have been better served had there been an upline that included the commissioners.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Turn it off. I'm sorry. All right.
There it is. Hi. Hi. Thank you so much.
Can I make a comment? Usually what I'm doing is I'm actually making a note of who comes up on the queue, because as people hit their buttons, it knocks you off.
Yeah, I did get knocked off. I was right earlier. I didn't skip anybody. I was fastest. Hi. I was going to ask about the Split Oak Charter Amendment. Could you give details about that and then its support in court?
Okay, so I did add that to the packet because I think it was an important point in the potential discovery you all are making in the county attorney's office and their role. And I would say that once that passed, the charter amendment was put through this process, very rigorous process. It went on for a long time, was moved on to the ballot, and it passed overwhelmingly. There was subsequently lawsuits, and but ultimately the Florida Communities Trust, which is a Tallahassee agency, part of Florida Department of Environmental Protection, held the key to either holding on to this as a single entity, knowing that the Florida Communities Trust was going to be evaluating the application that was submitted prior to my election to put the road through. I approached the county attorney's office in the memos in there, and I asked very pointedly, like, now we know, right? We didn't maybe know. The people that voted on it then didn't know. But now we know 86% or whatever it was really believes that this investment that Orange County made with tax dollars for conservation lands is worthy of keeping. And if, right now the county attorney's office, to me, it's in the charter. It should have been maybe something that they participated in, but nobody went to Tallahassee. I was the only commissioner that was up there, and the county attorney's office actually sort of positioned itself with CFX, Central Florida Expressway Authority, which to me felt conflicted, knowing the way that the county residents, the county electorate really weighed in, and quite frankly, your body back then, the efforts that were put forward. So I know it's a complicated case because it was a three-party purchase for conservation, and it was Osceola County, Orange County, and of course the Florida Communities Trust, which is the division of the state, helped purchase that, right? It was supposed to be done in perpetuity. These are things that you combine with another county because you can get more bang for your buck and you can get more land mass. And the idea that the memo back, which you can read, basically says, well, the part that they're looking to impact is wholly in Osceola County. Therefore, the county attorney's office isn't going to, opine or step into this. You will be getting back information as we get back from Florida Communities Trust. I haven't gotten any information since then. And you can read the date on there. It's been over a year. But the reality of it is that if you read the documents, the purchase documents, it was purchased as a whole, right? And my husband and I have a house that we purchased together, and he has a side of his closet, and I have a side of my closet. He's not allowed to burn his, right? This is the way that these types of purchases, we do them everywhere, right? Conserve 2 right up here. It's an agreement we have. It's a purchase that was made with Orlando. We don't get to move. We didn't get to do anything. We don't do anything there without Orlando signing off on it. So without getting into sort of what I feel like were disputable legal arguments, I would say the bottom line was, wait, who are you representing here? Because if it's not the people in the charter, which is part of the agency of Orange County, then I'm not sure who it is.
Thank you. Member Nguyen.
Good afternoon. Thank you to everyone. Thank you, Commissioner. Am I on now? I don't know. Okay. Thank you. You said that separation of powers. When you ran, were you thoughts of separation of powers at that time? I have two questions. And the second one, as you see it now, and you say things are not like they should be, what things are not like they should be, and what things would you change?
Excellent question. So let me start from the back, working forward.
Okay.
There have been a lot of, I think, disappointing outcomes to cases that I've been trying to work through with constituents that I feel like the outcome, had I been able to approach the strong mayor, may have been different. I don't know. It's a hypothetical, and I did not realize that as a person on the outside before I ran for office. I understood strong mayor form of government. I've read the documents. I had the opportunity to meet the author, who I think was coming to speak at one of these. But it is one of the critical pieces of the executive, is if they are the ceremonial head and they're driving the policy, but they can't be everywhere at once. And so having the ability to approach and talk about potential legislative initiatives or things that have been troubling my residents on a micro level, which the mayor isn't able to get to, is important. I think that the things that we're doing wrong is sometimes I think the community quits trusting us as commissioners, because they voted for us, they put us in office, they asked us to go and to make a difference there at the dais. And so it's frustrating to them if I'm not able to sway all 7 voters, or
Well,
even
you
enough.
never will, probably, all
Well,
7. Probably because everybody have different minds.
No,
don't
and
they?
that's what we want, right? We want representation to be diverse. We want it to be representative of their community. But I also think that when there is a compelling voice, and a compelling voice from the community, that if it's falling on deaf ears again and again and again, we're losing trust. And that's the part that concerns me. I think we need to be more representative and more responsive. And I think if commissioners and the mayor, who maybe weren't with that community through the public hearings, through the negotiations, through the BZA, if it gets to them and we've lost our voice as a community, and I've lost my voice as their representative, then I'm afraid we've lost the trust. And so for me, building that trust and making sure that they know I'm seeking from you potential areas or angles for us to make sure we're being a more representative democracy. Listen, I'm so glad you all are studying it instead of me. And I think it's a great thing to take on, because I don't know for sure if there's one single way to assure, that type of equitable representation. But what I know right now is that more than one time I have worked really closely with people and come a really long way, and come down to the day of, potentially watched some lobbying efforts in the building and ultimately lost the vote. So that feels like something that we can address either in a disclosure way, or having the supermajority option if it's a rezoning or substantial change. I know that those things have all been discussed, and I trust you all to do it. I really do trust you to use your best judgment in that deliberation.
just on that, do you think separation of powers are going to cure things? Because,
No, ma'am. I think democracy is messy but beautiful.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
But I think it gets us closer to being a representative democracy.
Okay, thank you. We have Member Jackson, O'Neill, and then Member Batchelor. Member Jackson?
Can you hear me? Yeah. Hi, Commissioner. Thank you so much for not only what you do for District 1, but especially Horizon West. As you said, there's a lot of growth here. Most recently, I guess since we're at Windermere, I should say thank you for working so hard to get the students their stadium back on campus. That's been an ongoing issue and a concern to a lot of the parents, so we appreciate you for that. In regards to the Sunshine Law, I have met with you on several occasions with neighbors for various issues that, like you said, we work very hard and diligently to prove our case, what our concerns are, and it's extremely frustrating to go to these meetings and it's you, one or two people from planning, and that's it. And then when we go in front of the board, we feel as if we have very little time to rehash all that we've been working on. And as you said, you're not able to speak to the mayor because of the limitations of sunshine. Is there any way, or is it even allowed for the mayor's staff to be present at some of these meetings so that they can relay to him before it's brought before the board how much, opposition that the residents have to a lot of these development plans?
Absolutely, because those were public, right? So when we met and discussed the impacts and what Eric was talking about actually was a shoreline violation, right? There was a commercial or a developer that actually did some pretty massive destruction to wetland that was under conservation as part back to the board to get an after-the-fact permit for an unpermitted dock because they just did it, right? This large, and we worked so closely together because part of their negotiations in the very beginning about this development really came down to we're going to be okay maybe with this development impacting us as long as we get this shoreline protection as their on-site mitigation. And lo and behold, in the end, they didn't get that either because when we tried to make the motion for denial of the after-the-fact permit, because I was like, bring it down, replant the stuff you took out. But I think the reality of it was that we did try to negotiate with them, and there was some remediation taking place, but the frustration lied in how isolated we felt. And to your point, yes, anybody can come to any of our community meetings because we do them very publicly. But as you all know, each district commissioner has their own community events, has their own community meetings. And, tonight is so luxurious because we have communications folks here, right? We've got great coverage here. But typically, and this is something that is out of the importance to me for transparency when I got into office was that one of the positions that I filled is Drew, raise your hand. He's a communications guy, because I realized that part of the disconnect was that residents didn't know what was happening around them, and that if we could make sure that we were communicating these plans, that we could work through all of these things to try to bring the best things forward, right? That's how we get good development plans. It has to be a partnership, and so, but that's out of my budget to make sure that we have that kind of communication because the way that the PEDS department does it, they send out their postcards with the little circle, the yellow circle. They have a very standard notice that goes in the newspaper. There's a standard notice that goes on where the impacted development is going to be, and that is their obligation. So I'm not blaming them, but it does give us a gap, right, in understanding for where our communities are seeing happening and what they were told was going to be somewhere.
Member O'Neill, and then Member Batchelor, and then Member Callan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Well, I shouldn't say welcome to you. I'm in your district, so thank you for welcoming me.
Your district too.
There's a question that I'm more than happy to get together later with your staff. At one of our hearings in East Orange County, the rural settlement issue came up. I need to be educated on that. I know that it's going to take a long time to educate me on anything, but what we could do then, in the interest of time tonight, and people who might want to testify or be heard tonight, if I could just get with your staff, I'm trying to understand the rural settlement and protection areas because it has come up in East Orange County, and I want to know what the benefits of those are. So if you could maybe have staff reach out to me.
Well, very quickly, I know in your packet there that I left, there's a map that shows.
I see the map. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I don't know if you had gotten here yet when I pointed out right at the very beginning of my comments that we're sitting squarely in the West Windermere Rural Settlement here.
Yeah.
And so to me is a, heightened example of what happens if we allow the erosion sometimes of those things that are considered lock solid. And I'm not saying anything that you all add could be lock solid, because you're listening to us still discuss how to enact some of these things that went in front of our electorate 4 years ago. But I think the important part is that the predictability of an urban service area, which is what our former comprehensive plan had. What it's done is it's left people on the outside of getting services, right? So people on the outside of that urban service line don't get sewer and water. They don't get the services, but there's not a whole lot that's protecting them from not having the encroachment of development, because anybody can come forward with an application for a substantial change in the comprehensive plan. And I know that you have in front of you a long-range agenda, and you can see in there how many are from District 1. And I think it's, those are all amendments to our comprehensive plan, which means they're going to change the future land use map, the underlying land use that neighbors may have thought was going to be the land use, because they said, oh, it's a comprehensive plan. Future land use is this. And lo and behold, the application comes through, and I tell you, over 100 for me since January 1st.
Thank you.
Member O'Neill.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilson. Just to follow up on what Member Batchelor was saying, we are in the West Windermere Rural Settlement, correct?
We are.
Okay, I grew up here. 62 years I've lived in Orange and Seminole County. Had it not been for Siri, I would have never found this meeting. This community has changed tremendously. And one thing that concerns me in our Governmental Structure Committee, we had a presentation on this Project 2050.
Vision 2050, yeah.
Vision 2050. And we went through the whole presentation, but not once was the word water ever mentioned in the entire presentation. We're adding 478,000 people by 2050, theoretically. But there was no regard to the planning for water. In this area, this is part of also the Wekiva Spring shed.
We're a little bit out, but very close.
It depends
Still
on
a very
which
important
map you
basin,
look.
because this is also we're in the Butler Chain of Lakes.
Yeah. So, Siri. I will, Dick. Thank you. But here and to the west, the ground is very porous, and it feeds the aquifer, and we draw water from the aquifer unless we pave over it. And that's what's happening here on the west side, and it's also happening on the east side. So in your estimation, Commissioner, we're looking at establishing a rural boundary, not a rural settlement, because I don't even know if that has any effect whatsoever, any legal effect.
It does, but once again, we have to layer these, because you've seen what the threshold is, right, to be able to amend a future underlying land use. So, yeah, absolutely.
But you mentioned that you were in agreement with the thought that to change the future land use, that the commission have to have a supermajority, or a majority plus one. So from your vantage point, where you are in this area and your foresight in this community, you would throw your support behind that supermajority, majority plus one, to change the future land use in this rural settlement area.
I think it's really important that when you're talking about future land use maps and updates, amendments, right, and you're talking about intensities and densities, that it is not just any way the wind blows. It needs to be very thoughtful. And so, yeah, I think a tight vote on one of those things that can be unbelievably impactful for our schools, our roads, our water. I think it should be something more than a narrow split, which many of them end up being.
A 4-3 vote.
Thank
So, yeah,
I'm sorry.
it should be a 5-2. That's what you're saying, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Was that your question, Member O'Neill?
That actually was a question.
Okay, thank you. No. I was asking if you were finished with your question.
Yes, and Eugene was bypassed, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I'm on the list.
He's on the list, and then our final person will be Member Callen. Mr. Cardo?
Okay. A detail that I pitch, and this is for Commissioner O'Neill, is supermajority doesn't work because 2012 to 2016, in one of my committees, I'm on all of them, I looked at all the data, and there was over 200 land use amendments at that period of time. 197 were 5-2. A couple were withdrawn, only 2 failed. So what I'm proposing, and where we have these supermajority thoughts, is N-1, because that gets really tough. And some of these land use is going to affect every generation for as long as we exist. So it should be very difficult, and that's why I'm pitching to the committee I'm on. I believe it's a rural boundary that we can't change unless we get MS unanimous. Not unanimous, but doggone close. So my questions, I have a number of questions. I apologize to everyone. Split Oak, I was one of the people on the 2020 Commission, and we worked very hard to try to get that passed. It did pass with 86%, approximately 540,000 people in this county voted for it. Greater population than 46 populations of 46 counties in our state. I was disheartened that we didn't get the commission to support that. So my first question of
Don't lump us all together.
Huh?
I was going to.
It was a 5-2, I think.
Member Staccato?
My question is, yes, sir.
We with this section, can you ask your questions and have as much deliberation as we have to have is fine, but can you maybe just ask the 5 questions and let the commissioner address them?
Would you see a additional committee to address the Split Oak question and make it so that we make it that any property owned by the county, be it a conservation or a park, has to go to the voters to be approved at the next general election? That was one of the things I've been thinking about. What are your thoughts?
Well, 2 separate things. So I think that getting some full understanding of the relationship that the county attorney's office has with our governing documents, right, which I think you all are working on, will get us to some of that, because these are things that are known. It's in the charter. That being said, I think when if this board, I know the public, anytime that you said it to the public and you ask them how they feel about park space, open space, recreational spaces, they support it. They support it wholeheartedly. So, you know, if you're looking for opportunities to ensure that those things are protected in a more meaningful way, I'm gonna support you on that. But I don't think it prevents you from finding out right now what happens to our governing documents if they are being challenged or not being upheld. What's happening to that review?
Thank you.
Okay, separation power. Okay. Separation of powers, sunshine. You're having problems because of the sunshine issue. What is the level of a mayor versus the legislature branch? I originally came out and still support a separation of a mayor and legislature. Mayor having no vote on the legislature branch. Do you support that as a strong mayor? And also, does that vote now become a new commissioner district?
Okay, so, all right, can I unpack that? So I think it's important. I think there's a couple things that are really important to address there. One of them is that I really like sunshine laws. I think they're important. I think deals should be made out in the light of day, and transparency is key to good governance. I think the part that's hard is that if anybody that's paid attention to a Tuesday BCC day, we have, you know, a binder like this that we go through every 2 weeks. As you can see from some of the land use cases, sometimes out of 25, 19 are in D1. it's like physically, mentally impossible to get the information needed to evaluate those things sometimes right there, unless you give some deference to either the community members that have come in, the BZA, if they've piped in, the PZC, if they've piped in, or the staff. And I have seen all those things ignored and lost a vote. So I think that there's, like I said, I think that when I try to simmer down and boil down, how do I get to this? I find myself to be a coalition maker. I want to talk to people how to work things through. I really want to make sure that if there's a way to do that, I'm doing that in the sunshine and getting it done. So, you know, I think you all have the minds and the ability right now to navigate what that looks like as far as our strong mayor form of government. I just feel like there are times that if there was a bigger picture that was able to be addressed in a different form besides that BCC day, that we would be able to serve our population better.
Could you possibly ask her the next two questions together and give the commissioner a chance?
The last one, in passing, you had mentioned that there was some lobbying effort out there. One of the things I've thought about is, should we, as a charter, address campaign contributions and lobbying?
No, don't go there. You don't want to fight the Supreme Court. I think this is an easy one. We are held now to making sure that if we have ex parte communications before a quasi-judicial hearing, that we are disclosing those. It never happens because, quite frankly, the voters aren't in a position to disclose that. I think a very simple charter amendment asking for a disclosure prior to a public hearing for ex parte communications is straightforward as you can get. You don't want to deal with campaign stuff. You don't want to, don't go there, because it gets really convoluted. If we're talking about county government and how we keep it of the people, by the people, and make sure that people are being heard equally, regardless of what they're bringing into these offices. And I'm not accusing. Listen, I think also my colleagues do a great job. It's pressure, right? It's pressure. You get calls from these entities. You get calls from these attorneys' office. You get calls from lobbyists. They come to the door. They come sometimes because they're doing something altruistic. And then they're like, hey, while I'm here, let me talk to you about this case that's coming. And you know what? That's fine. But then tell us that. When you get to the hearing, the public hearing, and I have, you know, Mike's back on me, and I'm getting ready to make my motion, and I say, I want to make sure everybody here knows I had a chance to meet with the applicant, I had a chance to meet with the public. That's my disclosure. What is yours? If you're voting, what is yours?
Thank you.
Okay,
our final speaker, thank you, Member Callan, is next, please, Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Wilson, thank you for having us here tonight, and thank you for serving. I appreciate the time you put into this, and many people do. Your district is like many districts in the county. They are called purple. They're a mixture of Republicans and Democrats who feel strongly about the same.
Orange.
Okay, and strongly about the same issues, which seem to be transportation and housing primarily. So it's kind of interesting. You talked about policy. I've gone through the current charter extensively. The current charter says the commission sets the policy and the mayor carries out the policy adopted by the commission. And that's what it says today. I think in practice the concern has been that the county administrator and the county attorney in the charter it doesn't directly say you report to the commission.
Yeah.
So one of the concerns we have, and I've heard from many county commissioners in the past and present, is that when you have a $6 billion budget and you're the governing entity setting the policy, you want to make sure you have a staff that reports to you.
That's right.
As well as an attorney.
I think it's the bare minimum is to be able to make sure that we're getting accurate, timely responses before decision making.
Okay.
You know, once again, very public. I asked for an independent return on investment for the TDT funds. I asked and I asked and I asked.
And that's, I've been involved with that behind the scenes, and I've been surprised the lack of detail and analytics provided to the commissioners. But that's not the question I got today. The question I have is, a couple of us have a kind of a narrow way of looking at this. If you simply say that the county administrator serves at both the pleasure of the mayor and the commission, as well as the county attorney, that would seem to, at that point, have accountability to the commission, because if 4 or 3 of the commission don't particularly care for that person at any given time, they can vote to oust them. So I was just curious, would you be receptive to a charter amendment that says the county administrator and the county attorney serve at the pleasure of the mayor and the commission?
Yes.
The other question about rural settlement, we'll get into that. Preemption. There's some discussion about being able to annex into a city to avoid regulation by the county.
I'm so glad you brought this up. Thank you, thank you, thank you, because it was on my list, and I had a stack of them, and I thought, you know,
I have a question first.
Get to it, then I have an answer.
Okay.
Or maybe it's not even the right question.
The question I have,
squeeze in my.
You know, the question I have, and it's a bit of a, it's not a gene wind up, but you know, there are issues of flood control and water quantity and water quality pollution, and at times the county's done a good job, and at times the county's done a poor job. There was that area over there by Lockhart, or the area, and they've done a poor job.
Member Callan, and the question?
The question I have is, how would you want us to look at framing a preemption language
Okay, so
that recognizes at the time the government, one or the other, have been unresponsive?
Okay, so I think it's really important also that we kind of back it up to the Florida Constitution, which tells us that our county charter gets to decide what is the what should prevail in the effect of some kind of conflict, right? So if there's some conflict with the municipality in the county, our charter, based on the Florida Constitution, our charter makes that decision. That's y'all. So yes, I think there is an absolute opportunity. One of the things that's very rarely invoked that we have already is 704, which really says that when it comes to pollution, that we prevail, the county prevails. Now, I think that, do you have to throw out the baby with the bathwater here? No. Why don't we define pollution? I would argue that when you're dredging and filling, you're polluting. I would argue when you're filling wetlands, you're polluting. But the county has operated to date that does not fall under 704, and therefore the city can do it without any regulatory oversight of the county.
Okay, last question I had here today was on your land use hearings. I noticed, and I always kind of mock the commissioners when I see 2,000 pages every 2 weeks or whatever you have to go through. Have you all ever thought about having one land use hearing at night, once every 2 months, cattle call, to list all the particular land use hearings at one time and take it off your regular agenda the rest of the meetings?
They can be as robust as the engagement. I think actually if you guys have been to one of those, raise your hands. Yeah. Yep. So they can be as robust of an engagement as our morning schedule, right? When we're going through work sessions and reviewing some other policy. But I think for me, more important than doing it on a separate day is doing it the right way, right? Which includes making sure that we have all the information from BZA and PZC, whatever the agency was that touched it first, the staff, all of that coming to the board in its totality, so that the board is armed at that time with enough information that if we don't get a chance to be able to unpack it, that they have the information in front of them. That being said, even with all of that, I think sometimes there is fatigue, right? There is fatigue. If you look at over 100 cases that have come forward, my 36 alone public hearings, there's just fatigue. So I think it's a fair question.
I have a follow-up related to that, Mr. Chairman. One question is that of the current board agenda that you all do, the time that you spend each board meeting, what portion of that time is spent on land use decisions and what portion is spent on consent agenda or regular agenda matters?
Well, consent agenda goes up and down in one shot. And I encourage all of my colleagues, everybody in the world, to comb through the consent agenda because that's where the business is happening. And I think a lot of times it's overlooked. There have been things that I've brought back to the board and said, well, this came through in a consent agenda. And everyone's like, no, it didn't. I'm like, well, actually, you made the motion and you seconded the motion, because that is where our business is happening. But it goes like this unless you pull something from it to make it a hearing. I would say it really depends on what the agenda looks like for that week. The submittals that go, the amendments for future land use, and the submittals, the transmittals that go up to the state, can be very controversial, and we've had up to 50, 60 speakers on some of those that have come through. And so we've been there, you know, anybody that followed Eastwood, those were those types of hearings. Those were the afternoon hearings. So, you know, if they'd started that at 7 o'clock at night, I can't imagine when they would have gotten out, since that one started at 2 in the afternoon and it didn't get out till 2 in the morning.
Thank you. We're going to have one final question from our Vice Chair, Mr. Shira, and I just want to share with the public. This process we're going through now is kind of an experiment to see how it works when the board members get the questions directly of the commissioners. Generally what we've done is we've placed those at the end of the meeting. So I'm just curious to see how this works out, and so far it seems to be going well if the members continue to keep their questions concise. So this is the first time, Commissioner.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Well, you're an elected official. Talking is what we do.
I don't know, especially that you all have really been doing a lot of diligence. So it's
Thank you.
I read the paper where y'all have raised your salaries, and I don't know if I didn't follow who voted for it and who voted against it. That'd make a difference in my question. And you know, when I was on the county commission, and when my colleague here was on the county commission, we worked 1 week. We had a meeting every Tuesday, and it seems to me that the county's gotten larger, and you shrunk the opportunity for people to participate from, if you assume there's every other week, it's 26 hearings from 52 hearings. You know, except there's some exception there for holidays and other activities that go on from time to time. But we used to work from 9 in the morning, and if we didn't finish it by 5, we'd take our dinner break and come back. And that happened in a really explosive time in the county commission, and which we've gone through recently. And I don't know when they changed it for every other week, but you're slowing the process up by not, you know, it's bureaucracy is what happens. You end up just slowing the whole process down.
You would know this. I think it was under Crotty, right?
I don't know when it was, but
under Crotty? The mayor sets the agenda. Yeah. So that's all through me.
When I was there, we were 3 times.
3 times a month.
Yeah, but well, I just felt that, you know, in light of the fact that you increased, not you, but individually, but of course you benefit from it, you know, that you might reconsider the fact that the agenda is so large. We used to have a pretty large agenda, and I can imagine if we had to jam it up in 2 weeks and do public hearings, I'd never get out of there if you're doing your job. You follow me? If you're just putting it all on the consent agenda and then voting on it, you know, like you said, there's a lot gets missed. That's one comment I had, and the other short comment I had was, you know, the Constitution of the United States allows for the public to petition their elected officials, and I would not like to see this board do anything to restrict the public from talking to their elected commissioners or elected officials.
Oh no, I agree.
Yeah,
no, there's nothing. I
got
agree.
a feeling that there was some comments from time to time to my left that you know, they wanted to kind of restrict it a bit. You know.
No, I think a disclosure is actually, it has nothing to do with chilling that. It's just that we all understand who we've been meeting with. You know, it's as simple as saying I met with the applicant and the residents. And I don't, but I think it's an important. I agree with you. I think that we want that engagement at all times.
A sign-in sheet is all you need. Really, they can sign in.
They do sign in. But the issue is that we don't know from the commissioner side who has met with who before they vote. And I think it's an important point, though, that burden isn't on the person that's reaching out to meet. The burden is on the elected. Because I agree with you. And I also, since you brought it up, I just want to make sure that I'm setting the like the tone, because it's really an important thing. That salary increase actually came up at a budget discussion 2 years ago. And we managed to make it through the 2022 elections without it making it back to the agenda, and then strangely it showed up this year. So, agenda development, what do you do?
I agree.
And I wasn't
y'all need as much, economic resources as necessary, because it's not a part-time job, so we were there.
Okay.
And you'll earn that fee.
For the general public, we are not as a group supporting raising salaries.
No, and I was going to say, I was a no vote, but I know that there's been, like, oh, well, who brought it to, it came up 2 budget seasons ago. Commissioner Bonilla brought it forward, and then it kind of went away for a while, and then it came up suspiciously a couple months.
Well, Commissioner Wilson, we really appreciate you standing in and answering the questions from the board. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Just a question of the board, just general questions. This is the first time we've done it quite this way. I would still like to have the public comments made and then our comments to the public made afterwards. Otherwise, the meetings would get lengthy. But I think was this process beneficial to you all as a whole? Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll now open this up for comments from the public, and if we've asked everyone that wants to speak if they will fill out a speaker's card. If you need to fill out a speaker's card, you can see the one of our staff people, clerk, Ms. Jennifer, raise your hand. And then she's going to call them up in the order that they were presented to her. I'm not sure how many we have, but the DSA tells me there are at least 18, so we shall see. So you each shall have 2 minutes. Questions will be at the end when we have commissioners' comments. That will be, and if you would like to stay and answer questions, you're welcome to, and that's the way we've done it in the past. I would like to keep it that way. Okay, Madam Clerk.
Chair, we do have
Deputy Clerk.
we do have 21 speakers this evening. The first speaker, if they could please come to the podium, Anthony DeMarco.
Thank you, board members. I'm Anthony DeMarco with the Florida Bankers Association. We have grave concerns about the public bank issue. I appreciate the time here. There are several things that bankers are in the business of risk management, and we don't think this public bank will handle that issue. You will not get FDIC insurance. I could talk longer, but I have the 2 minutes, so I want to be cognizant of your time. I'd be happy to meet with anybody after, and Chair Prophet, especially you. There are political motivations that go into how the bank is used. We saw that from both parties in the Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae lending and home. Both parties were pushing home ownership, and that helped to lead, it wasn't the only cause, but helped to lead to the financial crisis in 2008 as the government pushed more folks into the homes. You also saw the Silicon Valley Bank concentration of risk in 1 or 2 industries, and that's problematic. Also, if you are a qualified public depository, as the banks are, you have the local government is protected in a variety of ways. There's FDIC insurance. There's collateral that the bank has to put up, and then all the banks that take part in the program throughout the state have to put up if there's a shortfall in all that, they have to help cover that and make sure the local government is made whole. And so we've got grave concerns. I'll be happy to meet with you after and answer any questions you'd like to have. But with that, just made it on time. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you for your comments.
The next speaker is Allison Painter.
Hi, thank you for letting us come and speak to you folks today. It was very nice to meet my commissioner, which I've never met before, so thank you for coming. Couple things is, one, this area here is exploding with growth. So my quick question is, why don't we cut this 1 and 2 districts into 1, 2, and 3 and get rid of the mayor? That way you can't have, the vote is correct. I don't really see why we really have a mayor. As far as I know, I don't see him ever doing anything except as a figurehead. So that's 1. 2 is, the 25% pay raise. that blew me away because I really haven't seen anybody do anything that warrants 25%. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Will you give us your address? I think the clerk should.
Yeah, it's on the paper.
You have it? Will you read it when you call the speaker? If you'll tell us what issue they're on, if you have that, and where they're from, for the records.
The next speaker is Maria Jones. She resides at 14636 Porter Road.
Hi, it's a great opportunity to be here
Thank
and
you.
a pleasure. So I live in District 1, and I'm happy to have this opportunity to make our voice heard. I live off of Summer Lake Park Boulevard, Fiquette Road, and Reams Road. Our development of housing and a new fire station have been added without the roads being developed to carry all the traffic that's been going on here. Roads not even under construction as to of yet, and I'm understanding that it's going to take 3 to 4 years before that's even completed. Emergency vehicles are caught in traffic. I was on 535 just 3 days ago in the divided highway, and the emergency vehicle could not get through. Cars had nowhere to go on the side, let alone on Reams Road. You've got the marsh, swampy area, and we have a new fire station there, which is great for the area, but not. I can't see how those vehicles are going to get through. And the people that are hurting are the ones that need emergency treatment. And our public service needs sufficient roads before developers are allowed to build more housing. That housing development on Reams Road, and we don't even have the roads to help the traffic right now. I believe that the first responders deserve a pay increase over what has been requested for other pay raises, and especially in this time when we have this inflation going on, and all of our people here are hurting to make their bills and to get groceries. I also want to say I'm opposed to the expansion of the number of county commissioners, more government, higher taxes, all while the people are suffering. Thank you for the opportunity.
The next speaker is Robert Brown, 9367 Royal Estates Boulevard.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thanks for coming to our part of the world. I'm going to follow up a little bit on what Anthony DeMarco said, but with a different perspective. I just retired last year after 43 years in the Wall Street, Manhattan area, doing audits of banks, being a senior vice president for 17 years for a banking institution. The essence of banking is prudent lending in the United States, and private banks are established to do that. The need for public banks only arises when there's somebody who would like to get financing, but they don't meet the prudent lending standards of banks. And the issue that I have with a public bank is that they're not structured. The intent, while it may be admirable to find certain causes to provide financing to, using a banking institution is extremely risky. One, it tends to mask the nature of the transaction, which is more in the form of a government grant than it is in the form of a loan to be paid back. The credibility of the committee and politicians in general hangs in the balance when markets turn and these ostensibly loans run into difficulty because they haven't been properly underwritten to a prudent standard. And so they may appear to be solid for a while, but when the market becomes difficult, like it did with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and those institutions, the poor quality of the lending decisions made are ultimately revealed, and the way that they're revealed is through pain to the public. The cost of those losses that are incurred is ultimately paid for by taxpayers. So in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, that was American citizens bore the $400 billion of borrowing that the federal government did, and then the depressed interest rates, 1% to savers for 13 years to recapitalize the banks that bought the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac paper. So the intention may be good, but the mechanism is an extremely dangerous one to the taxpayers. So I would encourage you not to proceed with a public bank.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Donna Brown, 9367 R.E. Boulevard.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Donna Brown, a resident of Royal Estates in Orlando. I have an MBA in Finance and Management Information Systems, and I'm here to speak about my opinion on the public bank as well. I did have an issue. I did listen to the presentation that was done on October 11th. I didn't get to do 100% of it, but I did my homework. And I think the expense of the evaluation was mentioned to be close to $500,000. I don't want to exaggerate that, but it seems quite high, and seems to me would be like a waste of taxpayer dollars. I did want to list some of the disadvantages of having the public bank. Political influence. There's a risk that political pressure or influence could affect the decision-making process of a public bank. Political officials may push for lending to certain projects or businesses for political rather than financial reasons, potentially leading to poor financial decisions. Lack of accountability. Public banks may not be as accountable as private banks in terms of risk management and customer service. The absence of a profit motive can sometimes result in lax management practices. Here's one that I am strongly against: the competition with existing banks. We have wonderful community banks already, commercial banks, mom and pop banks, banks that have been around for 100 years. Public bank could face opposition and legal challenges from existing private banks in the area, as they may view it as unfair competition. This could lead to litigation and regulatory obstacles. Political and economic stability. During economic or political crises, a public bank may not be as stable as a private bank. You won't have the FDIC insurance, to my knowledge. It could be more exposed to political shifts or economic instability. And finally, the cost to taxpayers. The initial setup and ongoing operation of a public bank often requires funding from the taxpayers. If the bank struggles to generate profits, it may need additional funding from the public to cover operational costs. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
The next speaker is Jeff Gratt, 2813 Williams Road.
I'm here to speak in support of the rural boundary. It's going to benefit the environment. It's going to benefit wildlife and plants and things that are currently in these areas that don't get the protections that are afforded in state properties and parks and things like that. It's gonna also help raise property values in those areas as well. It's going to make those areas more marketable, more valuable, and it's hard to put a cost on how the values that brings to the table. So, in addition to protecting water quality, in addition to protecting aquifer recharge areas, that these areas are known to do. So that's all I have. Thank you.
The next speaker is Gerald Hibbins, 7078 Old Greenfield Lane.
Higgins, and it's 7018. I don't know if this is the proper forum, but I go to a lot of commissioners' meetings. I go to the commissioners downtown. I've spoken about it before, about the homeless problem we're having out here in Horizon West. They're moving from one community to another community, HOA. We're the tourism capital of the world. And it's pretty sad to see panhandlers and homeless people being taken to the bus station and put on a bus and sent to another problem area. Some of the laws that were recently passed back, I think, 2020, reference to boats and recreation vehicles are pretty vague. They could be more specific. Instead of just putting boats, make it watercraft. It could be a pontoon boat, canoe, kayak, whatever. Same with RVs. They're not enforcing it because it's not defined. It's very vague. You got to pop-up campers, fifth wheels, Class A, Class B, Class C. In reference to a woman about Reams Road, I attended those meetings with Commissioner Wilson, and I spoke up about the Public Works possibly putting gravel on the sides of the road so the cars could pull to the shoulders to get those emergency vehicles over. A couple years ago, Fire Commissioner put a moratorium on speed bumps. Now there are speed cushions. The reason being is every second counts if it's a fire or a drowning child. Every second counts. Every speed bump delays their response in 4 seconds. Okay, so I'm touching on a little bit of everything. And in reference to the Reams Road extension, I'm the secretary of HOA and Independence. We just got certified mail today on the county purchasing our area of our front of our community. So it is in the works. They're going to do Fauquet first, then Reams for those that do not know. Okay, and the firehouse is on Reams. Okay, it's a very bad intersection, and really, any help, we'd appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
May I make an offer to the gentleman? I also
Mr. Baxter, we'll be out of order if we start that.
I'm out of order?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, it won't be the first time.
and that worked with Dick Batchelor for the first time. I want you all to know.
The next speaker is Denise Martinez, 16065 Sand Hill Road.
Hi, thank you for coming. Thank you, Commissioner Wilson. Mine's just very brief. I'm in support of the rural boundaries. We're in the Windermere Rural Settlement. If you go 6 miles that way, you will be in the rural settlement that I live in, Lake Avalon Rural Settlement. And we definitely are a recharge area. And we've been being encroached on for many, many years. So we would like any additional protection that we can get. And I think that not only, our side, but on the east side also, any of the rural settlements are going to be benefited by having the rural boundaries put in place. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Michael Walsh, 16065 Sand Hill Road.
It's possible there's a connection between the two of us. Wanted to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. And as a teacher, I'm so reliant on Keynote or PowerPoint. This is very awkward for me. So I'm a dolphin out of water right now. And I'd like to be able to give you the history of how we became a rural settlement real quickly. Do we have 2 minutes? We bought some acreage out on Sand Hill Road and then went to a public meeting. And as the gentleman was explaining the map of what they planned to do with Horizons West, he said, we're going to put a 7-Eleven here and we're going to have a community center here. And we looked at each other and said to him, that's our property. That doesn't seem right. So we established that rural settlement in the middle of what was going to become Horizons West, showing how important it was to maintain the green space. When we look at, as an Orange County resident now for almost 40 years, it's encouraging to participate in a process that is available to allow us to mitigate those issues that are in need of change and to amend those that require improvement for the benefit of Orange County residents. There has never been a more important need to establish and maintain a life quality balance for Orange County than the development of a rural boundary to establish that balance. It's absolutely necessary. And I guess to leave you with something that Mark Twain once said, which is one of my favorite quotes, always do right. This will gratify some people and astonish the rest. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Teresa Myers, 2267 Hempel Avenue.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Teresa Schwetzen Myers. I represent the historic Nearland Gardens and the Gotha Rural Settlement Association. You touched on something really important, Mr. O'Neill, and that is that the Butler Chain and the Gotha Rural Settlement is the headwaters to Shingle Creek and the Everglades River of Glass. All of our fresh water starts here and flows down through Shingle Creek and all the way down to the Everglades. So with all these people moving in, where are we going to get the fresh water from? And the answer is our forests. Our forest, our biosphere, all of that is contained. They all depend on each other. So there are 18 rural settlements in Orange County. We're one of them. And all of them have the remaining green spaces and forests and watersheds that we need. There's no space to go. Windermere and Gotha are on an isthmus of land surrounded by the Butler chain, which gives all of Orange County its fresh water and all of South Florida its fresh water. So without forests and without these rural protections of these settlements, we have no fresh water for our generation and for our future generations of children and grandchildren behind us. So there has to be some protection in our charter for these rural settlement boundaries, our urban forests that give us the water, that sequester our carbon, that also protect us from stormwater mitigation. We've seen what's happened to Orlo Vista as they have become more and more deforested with more and more high-density development. They're now a giant retention pond. We do not want that for our rural settlements, and we moved into these rural settlements for that protection. So without protection of these urban forests and these green spaces and these wetlands and allowing development in the wetlands, we have no way of protecting our water source. There has to be some protection. There can't be a disconnect in between the charter, the comprehensive plan, and that. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Pam Gold, 2931 Sun Bittern Court.
No one ever pronounces that right. Hi, I'm School Board Member Pam Gould. Thank you for your service and all that you are doing in this very complex environment we live in. First of all, I would like to say I live in the Windermere Rural Settlement. As you've heard, we have 3 rural settlements, probably a spit away from here, and they are part of the choice and quality of life in West Orange County. When you're talking about the governance structure, though, I came in when there was a fight over this high school where you sit today. My first year, actually in my first 3 months, Scott and I had a 300-person meeting with press. That was my very first public meeting because of poor planning and unintended consequences that we had to work through. As you look to restructure government, remember the balance in an urban county where we do have the largest airport, the world-class attractions, and the variety of our amazing rural settlements that absolutely need to be protected. But if we slow things down or change things too much, we are at risk of it being taken away from our local control. And we certainly experienced that on the school board with the CEA. That was trumped by our legislative. We were working very well together with the county to make sure that we had enough seats in schools as we were school planning and working with our developers. We no longer have that ability. So anything that you're putting into the charter, please think it all the way through and think about how do we maintain that local control, because I sure would rather fight at the local level with my neighbors and have those discussions and have the ability to build those collaborations and those partnerships than have to drive 4 hours to Tallahassee and have 3 minutes to explain to someone what it means to us. So thank you for your time and thank you for your consideration.
Our next speaker is Aaron Huntley, 10920
Ledgement.
Ledgement. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much for serving and listening to all of our comments. Thank you, Commissioner Wilson. I'm here to caution the Charter Review Commission against recommending amendments that expand government here in Orange County. Last month, the Orange County Commission voted to give themselves a 25% raise. And now we have a charter review proposals that want to expand the commission and increase the amount of time on the commission. So they're going to make more money, then they're going to add more people to make more money, and then we're going to add another term of people making more money, and then we're going to have a bank to put it all in. Doesn't sound good to me. This is big government on steroids, and we don't like it out here in West Orange County. Expanding more commissioners means we would have to spend more money for offices, for salaries, labor, all of that, expanding the amount of time on the commission from 8 years to 12 years. Even the president only gets 2 terms, so I think we can do it here too. Currently, we have the intersection, which has been spoken of here in District 1, that will take 3 more years to expand. We've been told it won't be completed till 2026 or beyond. Will big government make this possible? No, it'll be more red tape, more bureaucracy, and less service to we the people. We also have commissioners who say that they have too much work to do, which is funny because this is a service role for the public. Everything is upside down here in Orange County. Where's the government of the people, by the people, for the people? Instead, we have a government wanting to give itself more power and pay themselves more with our tax dollars. What has happened to public service? We don't need a bigger government, and we certainly do not need commissioners to have a 25% raise when families in this area and throughout this county are struggling day in and day out. We need effective, efficient local government that is accountable to us, the taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Patricia Rumpf.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Thank you for your service, and I'm happy to be here in District 1. But I'm here, been to all the meetings just about, but this is my third meeting. I watch you online and when I'm not here. I said it before, I came behind the appropriate speaker because I'm here because you haven't convinced me yet to extend county commissioner terms. I think 8 years is enough. I've been following this political since 1970. I went through some old stuff, Mr. Hardage.
Thank you.
And just how long I've been following these things that's going on. I collect these. So the problem is, it's not that you need more term. The problem is, I think most people that run for office come in and not knowing what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
It may take time to learn the government, but if you have to figure out what you want to do, in addition to learn the government, you won't get anything done. Commissioner Wilson, you said it so eloquently about it's a lack of resource, but a lot of need for the resource. I know the Board of County Commissioner has a lot to do, and they're drawing on a lot of the Orange County staff, and so do I. As a resident, I'm sure y'all see me many of times at these meetings, at the redistricting meeting, at the Board of County Commissioner meeting, at the zoning meeting. So just like the county commissioner joined on the staff, so am I. So we need more staff there. But the problem, I've lost my notes. So, things to do. There we go. So we need to figure out, exploring more needs is not going to, exploring more time for the commissioner is not the solution to get things done. Then my other question is, if you're talking about extending the Board of County Commissioners, is this also extending the mayor term? Because the problem is, I heard you say, I'm out of here, but Mr. Hardis, the problem is if
it's only 15 seconds.
Okay, 15 seconds. If you're going to extend the Board of County Commissioner term, because you said there are changes come in, you got to extend the mayor term as well. So he'll be able, whoever come in will be able to work with the Board of County Commissioner. You haven't convinced me yet. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The next speaker is Kyle Gowdy.
Like everyone else said, thank you all for being here. I know I'm sure this takes a lot of time, and I'm sure you have families and other things, but this is important. So a couple points that we've heard over and over again. So one of which is the term limits. I think you can see from the top to the bottom within our government that term limits have become a problem. And I agree with the sentiment we just heard. I think Ms. Huntley also described it really well. And Commissioner Wilson also mentioned it earlier about lobbying and the influence of lobbying. Well, if you have somebody who has 8 years or somebody who has 12 years, that lobbying interest, whoever it may be, a developer or whomever it may be, now has 4 more years of that person's ear. And also, there's a lot of different roles within this county government. So this isn't saying that somebody's capped at 8 years of public service, right? There's a lot of other things people can do within the government. Take those experiences from what they may have learned on the commission, school board from Ms. Gould earlier, and there's a lot of different other things you can do within the county without more than 2 terms or 8 years. And then also, I know there's an issue here about reducing the number of votes that you would need to appeal or ratify the charter. And to me, at its core, that just feels very anti-democratic. If you're going to reduce the number of votes that you need to get something done, that tells me that it probably doesn't have the public support that the people would want to get it done. So I'm just here because I love this country, I love this county, and I love to hear what everybody's had to say tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Kevin Kelly.
Mr. Kelly, you mind telling us where you're from? If she didn't.
Right over there.
Across the street.
4315 Indian Deer Road. It's part of Horizons West. So we're in unincorporated Orange County, right across the street. So while we're talking about this area, we have two deputies that are assigned here. It's great. We share it. We share that assignment, this area, with Pine Hills. So when there's a problem in Pine Hills, our deputies are over there. That's how the zone is set up. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But what I'm starting to see is that if you have municipalities in your area, they have their own police departments. They have the ear of the government, of the county commission or the commissioner, right? So I'm starting to hear some things about big government tonight. It occurs to me that we should be coming up with some solutions or some suggestions. First, maybe the role of this organization is to encourage the creation of municipalities in the county, including Pine Hills, which I think there was a lot of folks at the first meeting, the first hearing, that talked about that. That would open up something that a lot of people have talked about tonight, which is the opportunity for more people to get involved. Because right now, to be a politician in the county, to be on the school board, to be a commissioner means you have to be a professional politician, because it's an expensive and time-consuming endeavor, right? Whatever happened to having, you know, your neighbor or your dad as city councilor? Well, if you're in a small place, easy to do, right? Well, we have that actually in parts of the county, right? In some of these municipalities. Some of the really well-run places like Ocoee or Winter Garden, right? Where they have a mayor, they have a city council, right? They get things done, and then you have the opportunity to show them the door if they don't work. So by the way, I am very in favor of term limits, okay? Last suggestion for this group, because a lot of you, thank you.
You may finish your sentence.
Last one?
Yes, 15
All right.
seconds.
In 8 years, we're going to redistrict. Get rid of the rule that says that you have to protect your county commissioner when you redistrict.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Paul Roundtree, 10726 Crescent Lake Court.
Thanks, everyone, for being here. I filled out the card just in case I had a question, but I guess I'll speak. I'm president of Main Street Community Bank. I've been in banking 23 years. I'm obviously opposed to a public bank. I think several residents have said risk. We're in the business of risk. We do it every day, any day. I'm not sure the government has done a really good job, nor are they as nimble as we are. I'm a community banker. I've been a community banker for all 23 years. I think I understand how to serve my community, and I would encourage you, if you have any questions, Mr. DeMarco is going to understand exactly what every banker in Florida does, needs, how they mitigate that risk, and the regulatory environment that goes along with that, which is also burdensome. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Chris Messina. Messina, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening.
You can let us know where you're from, Mr. Messina.
Oh, sure. Yeah, Winter Park, in Goldenrod area of Winter Park. There's a proposal before this commission to expand the size of Orange County government. We don't have enough government for our growing population, its proponents say. They say this despite a countywide governance structure that has 6 commissioners, a mayor, plus 10 mayors of individual towns, and there are 45 local commissioners for a total of 62 local government officials. We don't have too little government in Orange County. We have too little government efficiency. Dangerous things happen in this situation because inefficient and overly large governments have a tendency to regulate that which they shouldn't. The unconstitutional August 21st Orange County COVID vaccine mandate is a prime example. It has harmed hundreds of Orange County employees, some of whom are here tonight, a wrong that must be righted. We cannot count on the BCC to correct itself. That's why I've submitted a formal proposal for a charter amendment to be placed on the ballot. This amendment calls for 0.5% of the 23-24 county budget to be placed into a mandate compensation fund to make those injured Orange County employees whole. I urge you to move this proposal today to a committee for formal ballot consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Jeff Dorian. Okay. The next speaker is, excuse me, Rogers? Maven Rogers, thank you.
You can let us know where you're from.
Winter Park, Florida. Okay. Hi, everyone. I want to thank you, Commissioner Wilson, because your thing about communication is a lot of reason why I'm here and I'm active because of your office. So thank you for that. I really appreciate that. So I'm here today, and when I go online, I can't really understand the meeting. I'm hoping that this meeting is a ballot initiative meeting, and I read the agenda, but I still lacked a little bit of confusion. So bear with me if I'm advocating for something that's not really relevant. Mm-hmm. But what I'd like to advocate today for is a 1/2-cent sales tax to go on the next ballot for public transportation and multimodal initiatives for Orange County. The thing is we do not have a good public transit system. I know that we had the transportation tax on the ballot last year, but that was often the reason why a lot of that failed. I talked to community members. I worked for the Office of Sustainability for Orange County. I worked for the Office of Sustainability for the City of Orlando. The community didn't want to widen roads. They didn't want to increase traffic congestion. They didn't want anything to do with traffic. They wanted to focus on public transit. And a lot of things that we're talking about today with the royal boundaries and density is if we increase density in the downtown corridor, we need development downtown. I want to spend money downtown. There is nowhere for me to spend money downtown. There is nowhere for me to hang out besides Lake Eola and Swans, right? I want more things to do. I want transit. I want things to take me places. I want to get on Sunrail, and I want to stop in Apopka, and I want to spend my money, and I want to get back on the Sunrail, and I want to get on it at 10 o'clock at night, and I want to go to my apartment, like a real city that has 1.5 million residents in it does. And I'm really hoping that you might consider this, because I really think that if we put a 1/2-cent public transit, 1/2 a penny, public transit and multimodal transit on the ballot and give the residents an opportunity to vote on just public transit. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Kelly Dudek, 4128 Willow Bay Drive.
Hi there, thank you, and welcome to Windermere High School. I'm a proud parent of a junior at this school, and I want to thank Commissioner Wilson for all of her efforts at the school and in this community. We're so thrilled to host you here tonight. I came to this meeting to talk specifically about term limits. I think term limits are important and something we should consider. I know that the government committee was having some discussion about how are we going to fit all of the 5 things that we want to recommend to the ballot, like frequency and separation of power and county attorney. Just don't even bother with term limits. Don't give them any more. 8 is enough, just like the TV show. I also want to throw my support in. I don't live in a rural settlement, but I am a District 1 resident for the last 19 years and support any rural settlement. I'm not a rural person myself, but I recognize the need for that in the West Side. So please include that in when you deliberate on public opinion. I hope you will take what you've heard tonight about term limits and rural settlements very seriously, because those are big concerns here in the West Side. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Lori Forrester, 16050 Sand Hill Road.
Hi, I've spoken to y'all before, except this time nobody acquiesced their time to me. But I am here to speak on behalf of the rural boundary, but I do want to make sure that this is very clear because I heard it twice when you all were asking questions of the commissioner. By the way, thank you, Commissioner Wilson. It was mentioned that residents of Orange County are concerned with traffic and housing. They are not concerned with traffic and housing. They are concerned with traffic and affordable housing. So you have to add that word affordable. Okay. Now I only have a minute and a half. So urban sprawl costs taxpayers a lot of money, as everybody knows, because there's no infrastructure, there's no clean air, there's no roadways, there's no public transportation, it is no sewers, you're talking about clean water, clean air, etc. And these services, most of the costs of these services do not fall on developers, they fall on the taxpayers of Orange County. I have attended several rural boundary work sessions that you all have had, and thank you, Eric, Rashi, and Eugene, and Mr. Voss. And the thoughtfulness that you all have given to this topic is impressive. And your ability to kind of like think out of the box and understand the need that there needs to be a rural boundary, and by infilling in the urban service area is more cost effective for the residents that are here in Orange County. Anyway, I've also attended many BCC public hearing meetings, and nearly every single time the vote goes in favor of increased density and intensity. And we Orange County residents are frustrated with traffic gridlock, lack of public transportation, pressure on our clean water and clean air, etc., due to urban sprawl. Urban sprawl is very dangerous for us, and without a rural boundary, we're pretty well.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Ann Lott, 10824 Glen Cove Circle.
Hello, thank you for being here today. I want to speak in favor of the rural boundary. I think that urban sprawl is horrendous for the environment, it's horrendous for people, it's horrendous for taxpayers. But I do want to say that we need more public transit in the urban core, and we need more development in the urban core as opposed to in the rural areas. And I want to echo my support for a 1/2 cent sales tax for public transit, because we need public transit in areas where everybody uses cars. It's just going to be a madhouse in terms of traffic. And then if we had better public transit, we could have more efficient transportation. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Deputy Clerk, will you let us know approximately how many cars we have remaining?
We have 3 additional speakers.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Nelson Betancourt, 5350 East Cayley Street.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and the public. My name is Nelson Betancourt, and I'm directing my comments to the bankers here. I'm actually the gentleman that introduced
Mr. Betancourt, you have to only adjust the board. Thank you. They'll be able to hear you.
Okay. All right. There's a huge misconception about what public banking is. First of all, a public bank would actually partner with a community bank to help them make better and bigger loans that they cannot provide for themselves because of their capitalization. Second, a public bank will not be involved in financing houses, cars, debit cards, any of that stuff. That's strictly for private banks. A public bank will only fund infrastructure, housing, and transportation stuff, okay? So if you don't get that clear in your heads,
Mr. Betancourt.
if you don't get that clear in your heads, then you're going to be adding all this mumbo jumbo on top of it that doesn't make any sense, all right? So, by the way, to the bankers in here, on October 30th, the Public Bank Committee will have a meeting in downtown Orange County. I believe it's at 1:30 p.m. You should be there. Okay, you should be there if you really want to know what this is all about. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Kevin Horang, 17122 Lake Ingram Road.
How is everybody? I'm here kind of on the sunshine law deal because I didn't understand a lot of that, but we've had all these, big builders coming in around us, and it seems like they get everything they want, every land change, every variance, no matter what it costs the people that have been here for decades, the rural people. My well's been collapsed. My drinking water is going to be poisoned. It doesn't seem like anybody's listening, and nobody's being held accountable for it. So Commissioner Wilson has gone to bat as far as I could tell, but I get frustrated since Walmart was coming in when other commissioners was in. I thought, well, they don't have my back. They're not doing anything for us. They're just doing it for the big builders. I was unaware that lobbyists would go in there and lobby the other commissioners. I often wonder what motivated them to vote over the top of the commissioner that's in the district, because she would know better, right? She would know what's going on in that district. But I don't think that a lobbyist should be able to go in and lobby for these whatever billionaire developers and not understand what's going on in that district. And I feel like she's there, she knows. She should be able to tell everybody what's going on with that. I email everybody, every district, and I've been told, well, you're not in my district. Well, you vote. I mean, if you're voting about stuff going on here, I'm going to let you know about everything that's going on, because she's not allowed. And I don't think that's really good, because it really did make me mad at the commissioners I've had. I get mad at them. I don't trust them because they can't tell, and I feel like they're not fighting for me. So I go with them, and I shouldn't, because the fault doesn't lie in them. They're trying to back me, but they can't do things because their hands are tied. So I think maybe we need to look at that sunshine law and do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
5 seconds left.
The final speaker card that I have is for Paul DeHart, 2225 Lake Wally Woods Drive.
It's Nally Woods Drive. I apologize for my dress. I just got off a plane from Nashville, and my voice is a little bit hoarse, but I thought this was important. And I wanted to reiterate the frustration the last speaker just talked about. I appreciate Commissioner Wilson and you guys. I live in a rural settlement, so I'm here to protect the rural settlement, but the more talk about the frustration of the process that we're talking about. We have a temple that they're trying to put in our community. It's 2 square miles, very small. Hempel Road is a 2-lane road. It's a 35,000 square foot Hindu temple. No problems with the temple, the church generally, but it shouldn't be in our small community. Our community is 100% against it, 100%. We've been to public meetings. We had a zoning meeting. The county commissioner or staff has recommended denial twice. Zoning denied it. We go to our commissioner meeting. We spend 4 hours. We have all of our members there. We talk about it, 100% against it. And a decision's not made. A decision's made to not make a decision, which is extremely frustrating. They push it till January 24th. We have to go through this process all again. I'm being contacted to go to another public meeting to represent our community. And we're 100% against this, a 35,000 square foot temple in a small community. The next closest building is 5,000 square feet. When you make a zoning exception, it should be to benefit our community. We have no Hindu population. It will not benefit our community. It's a simple case. And yet, Commissioner Wilson recommends a denial, and nobody supports that on the board at all. And we're just here again. It's extremely frustrating. Everything she said, I wanted to really be an example of what she's talking about, and at least express to you how frustrating that is. The amount of time, government time wasted, your time wasted having to hear me tell you about it, but my time and everyone that we gathered together to put our arguments together and try and fight this. So thank you.
Thank you. That concludes all the cards that we have received. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to speak who did not complete a card? Going once? Done. Okay, we're going to go to the section of our agenda that's our consent item, which is the approval of the execution of our minutes. And shortly after that, we'll have a short 10-minute break.
I so moved.
Okay, so it's been moved by Member Nguyen, to adopt our minutes of the September 18th, 2023. Do we have a second? Been moved and seconded by Commissioner Weinsberg. So done. We'll now stand in recess for, all in favor? So done. Thank you. to order. Now, I just want to say for the sake of the board and the public, at our last meeting, there was a recommendation that we put an item into committee to discuss transportation and mass transit. And at that point, we advised the public that we would have our legal staff review that and give us some recommendations as to how we could enter it into committee or if we should. And when I talked with staff this week, if you notice, it's not on the agenda. And we try to keep our word with the public. The reason it's not on the agenda is because our legal staff is still reviewing it to give us some direction as to how we can enter it. Our job here is to discuss policy, not to discuss and do administration. So that's what the issue is. We're a policy group. And to say how the county does transportation or where they put the buses is really not our job. So if you just give us a little bit of time, we'll make sure that gets up for a discussion at our next meeting. We finished our consent agenda. We have one action item that's, let me get back on track. Right, thank you. We have our committee updates from our various chairs. Let me see your agenda. Okay, we're going to have committee updates from our committees. Our first update would be from our Sustainable Growth Committee. That is Chairman Grimer. Did I get the name right this time? Bremer. I'm working on it.
Chair, I'm just letting it go. It's cool. It's only been my whole life, so at this point, I've lost that fight, and I ain't fighting it no more. Yeah, since we last met, the full CRC, we've had two meetings from the Sustainable Growth and Charter Cleanup Committee. Our first one was on September 20th. We heard a presentation from Olin Hill of the county. He's an assistant manager of the county planning division, and we talked a lot about the growth patterns here in Orange County, and specifically a lot about the urban service area and how it's supposed to work to constrain urban style development to areas within it, and how much it kind of does not work. And then we also talked about how a rural boundary would impact the Vision 2050 Comprehensive Plan update, which has been transmitted by the Board of County Commissioners to the state of Florida and being reviewed right now. And if that is adopted after the review by the state of Florida, that will be the new comprehensive plan for the county, which makes a lot of great strides in terms of urban style development. So we talked about how if we were to throw a rural boundary in the mix, what effect that could have on that new comprehensive plan. Good discussion on that date. Then last week, October 12th, we met and talked about the rural boundary again, this time with a discussion with Commissioner Lee Constantine of Seminole County. Seminole County has their own rural boundary, and he's been a big supporter of it. And we had a great conversation, and it was we had a light bulb moment due to Commissioner Constantine. One of the things I had been concerned about as committee chair about the rural boundary issue is how we, as a four-person committee, were going to draw it, and whether we had the expertise and the input necessary to say what these lines should be, and this is what should go to the voters of Orange County if approved by the full CRC to put into the county charter. And Commissioner Constantine made clear that one of the reasons it worked so well in Seminole County when it was passed is because they spent 2 years before it ever came to the ballot getting support from the public to support it, meeting with stakeholders, meeting with the public, explaining, and gathering all sorts of information. So the public felt they really had a voice in the crafting of the proposal, and that was why it was so supported by the members of Seminole County. So he had a great idea that we thought, and I thought too, of the 2024 potential proposal being to create a rural boundary commission, which would have the duty of creating the rural boundary lines. They would hold public meetings. They would do that outreach that was so successful in Seminole County. And they would have 2 years to do that and draw up a proposal for rural boundary lines. And then once that work was done, and they would be required by the 2024 proposal to do so, they would have to draw lines. That would go on the 2026 ballot, the actual lines. So therefore, we'd have the time to get the public's input, hear from all experts, and really hone in on a really good proposal for the rural boundary. So we thought that was just a really interesting and unique idea that we're going to consider very, very strongly. And we also had a great conversation about, Commissioner Wilson, I think other people have mentioned also about talking about a heightened vote standard for changing the future land uses or doing any rezonings outside of the urban service area or rural boundary. We talked about that extensively. That is something we could also include in the 2024 charter amendment proposal. We could say that if rural boundaries are implemented in 2026, there would be some sort of heightened vote standard required to change them. So we'd have that ability to do that in 2024, and we discussed what kind of form that would take, whether it be a unanimous vote, which I think the committee is generally against a unanimous vote being required, it's being a little too restrictive, or is it a supermajority, or as Eugene mentioned earlier, is it a unanimous vote -1? So that would be a 6-1 vote under the current county structure. So that was a really unique and eye-opening experience for the committee. We had not considered that possibility, and we are very interested in it. So our next meeting is coming up on Thursday, November 1st. I believe it's currently scheduled for. And one of the things that we are going to be taking up there, our attorney, Mr. Vos, is going to draw up a first draft of the language of creating this commission and this heightened vote standard, and then we're going to discuss it and pull it apart and work from there. But that was a really unique and great meeting that we just had, so really looking forward to what comes next.
Thank you. Our next report will be from our Governmental Structure Committee, Mr. De La Patilla.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Our committee, Government Structure, met on September 27th, and we had works for the county and the administrative offices. We had a presentation on potentially the cost to expand the county commission chambers, as well as the retrofit the county commission offices on the 5th floor of the county administration building. In the event that the expansion of the county commission is approved by the voters, whether it's 1 district or 2 districts, there'll be added costs. We're factoring what those costs will be as we make our decisions. The initial expense, I believe it was about $1.9 million to expand the chambers. That's just one cost, so we'll go through that. That's part of our analysis, and that'll be part of our final report. On October 4th, we had a meeting. We had the Director of Planning, Alberto Vargas, from Orange County, and he gave us sort of a snapshot of where the population is growing here in Orange County. He showed us the 2050 plan, same plan he showed to the Mr. Grimmer's committee. And Orange County is growing at a rate of 1,500 people a week. And most of that growth is happening in 2 areas of the county. Number one, the fastest growing area is here in Horizon West, and number 2, in the Lake Nona area. So I would probably venture to say that maybe 60% of the total growth in Orange County is occurring in those 2 areas. That is why Commissioner Wilson states that, a large part of the long-range plan agenda has to do with projects in District 1. She has 120 applications a year for rezoning properties because the growth is coming out here. So part of the decision on whether to expand is we look at our county population, and we look at where our county population was in 1988 when the charter was created. We had a population of 500,000 people. Today we have a population of 1.5 million. By the end of the decade, we're going to have 1.8 million people. So, and a lot of these people are coming here to Horizon West. So, you sense your frustration with the amount of growth that we're seeing and the county's inability to a certain degree to meet up with the growth, right? The county commission budgets are allocated proportionately. As far as her office staff, she gets the same amount that any other district has, yet one could argue she has 3 times as much work. Right, and the same thing, it's always been that case. District 1 has always been the fastest growing county. It was that way when Commissioner Vanderlei was a commissioner. It was that way when Commissioner Boyd was the commissioner. It was that way when Commissioner Jacobs was the commissioner at the start of the decade. So the growth is coming here. So The topics that we're covering, as mentioned before, were expansion of the county commission districts, the term limits, whether or not, and we've heard your testimony here today, and thank you for all that spoke, expanding the term limits. We're looking at the county attorney. So the county attorney, when the charter was created, was under the, reported to the full Board of County Commissioners. That was in 1986. In 1988, the charter was amendment to add one more district, create District 6, and they made some administrative changes, and they put the county attorney as a department reporting only to the mayor. So without going to the voters, they made a significant change that's impacted Orange County for the last 36 years or so. We're also looking at the frequency of the Charter Commission meetings. This Charter Commission meets every 4 years. We're looking at whether it should continue to meet every 4 years or make it every 8 years or so. And then we're dealing obviously with the separation of powers, which is whether or not the mayor should be part of the legislative body. Right, so the mayor right now serves, based on our charter, serves on both the executive side and the legislative side. That may have been good back in 1986 when we had 500,000 people, but we're one of the fastest growing counties in the state of Florida. Okay, there are a lot of responsibilities that the mayor is tasked for, including managing this work chart here, which is there's a lot of people and a lot of county departments, and when you think about this. Is it a good use of the mayor's time to be sitting in on afternoon meetings dealing with rezoning and dealing with land use issues, or should the mayor be available to travel, bring new business to Orange County, bring go to Washington D.C. and advocate for transportation dollars or Tallahassee? So that those are things that we're discussing. So our next meeting is Wednesday, the 18th of October at 11 a.m. It's going to be held at the County Administration Building, I think in the 4th floor, right?
Yes, Chair.
Okay. That is it. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. Next report.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry. Very important. I'd like an opportunity to recognize Pam Gould. I want to ask her a specific school board member Pam Gould. I've got a specific question on our expansion question.
Yes, Ms. Gould.
Thank you, Member Gould. You serve on the Orange County School Board. The Orange County School Board has 7 districts, correct?
Correct.
And you have the chair. The chair also votes, right? And how do you all do with when there's a tie vote?
So we're the only district in the state of Florida that has a countywide elected chair. So if there is a tie, she has 2 votes. Our structure also is that the superintendent and the general counsel report to the board. Just about everybody else reports to the superintendent.
Okay.
Thank you. Pleasure. Thank you for that report. Our next report will be from Member Nguyen, or Chair Nguyen, on the Initiative Petition Committee.
Good afternoon, everyone. Beans here. Okay, am I on now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Our last meeting of October 11th, 2023. Oh, just before I began, it was mentioned last time in our meeting that the charter would be changed. Let me correct it. The charter has not been changed and will not be changed unless it is the changes are recommended to the initiative, and if it does, the footprint of Orange County, all the things that we are trying to do, with all the changes, the footprint of Orange County will be different. And it's going to be hard for people really to understand all of the changes that we are discussing here. So now, our meeting from September, the members voted to recommend the legal review panel. We began in referendum F by eliminating the financial impact statements by the county comptroller. However, after long and a lot of discussions, the members decided to table that and voted to speak to the comptroller because we cannot say what he did or how he did it.
The next one, we're eliminating public hearings on an initiative petition. Next, eliminating the ability for a voter who signed a petition to withdraw their signature. The committee discussed the financial impact analysis to increase or decrease that the cost would be incurred, what costs would be incurred to the government. Some of our members discussed it in length, and they thought the comptroller could not give satisfactory information. It was not, he just couldn't. Finally, the members voted to ask the comptroller or a representative to attend our next meeting, October 30, at 11 a.m. to give their thoughts and what methods they use to obtain this financial information. It was thought and said that they didn't think it could ever happen. So I'm not going to talk about what the comptroller can and cannot do until I hear from him. That's my report.
Thank you for that report, Chair Wynn. Our final report will be from our creation of a public bank committee, which is chaired by Member Prophet.
Yes, good evening, everyone. We had our second meeting on October 11th at 1:30. We are still in the exploratory stage of a public bank. This was something that was brought up at a meeting by several members of the community, so we are exploring what it looks like, what could happen, and so what we did was we asked the Treasury Manager from the Comptroller's Office, Sean Poland, to give us a report on how much money municipalities spent on studies, what other public banks maybe are out there and how are they run, what problem are we trying to solve with the creation of a public bank, what gap are we filling, what would it look like, and where would the money come from. So he put together a PowerPoint presentation at our meeting. It was very, very informative, very thoughtful. He took a lot of time on it, so we really appreciate his time and effort and energy. And we have a meeting on October 30th at 1:30, say on the 4th floor of the county building. And the speaker will be Attorney Earl Stalin. He is the chair of the Rocky Mountain Public Banking Institute. He will be appearing via Zoom, but he is going to put together a presentation as to how a public bank could be created and what are the benefits of that. And so we look forward to that meeting, and I appreciate the bankers for coming today, giving their input, and I encourage them to come to that meeting as well. And if there's any reports that you have or an opinion on anything, you can always email the charter. What's the email address?
The charter inbox, it's charter2024@occompt.com.
Yeah, because I know 2 minutes is hard to get all of your thoughts. So if there's any information that you want us to look at or that you have, please, we encourage you to email the
charter2024@ocompt.com.
And that goes for any of the committees. You guys can email the chair.
Yes, thank you. And just for the benefit of the public, all of our committees are exploratory and research. Committees do not pass referendums for ballot initiatives. They will put together a package of information, and once they finish their research, they'll bring it back to the full CRC, and the CRC will then have deliberations and public hearings on them if we decide to move them forward. Once we decide to move them forward by a majority vote, then they will go to the ballot, but only after they've been deliberated by this committee. And as I said earlier, and we're not at discussion item now, but when we get to discussion items, we'll discuss that a lot more. I'm really interested in your input as to how we bring these things back. But I just want the public to know that we're really excited about all of these committees, and we've done everything we possibly can to include all of the issues that have been brought to us by the public.
and that's without prejudice of our opinion of whether they are good or bad. I think that all the items that have been brought have been good. I really do. But at the end of the day, it will be this board that will decide what goes to the public. We're now going to move to discussion items. We have several items that have been placed on the agenda. And the chair gets the privilege of setting the agenda, and we have a procedure in our bylaws that lets the public know how they can get items on the agenda. So if this board, for some reason, did not place an item on the agenda, we're the first CRC to have bylaws that let the public know that they can get items on the agenda without coming through one of the 15 of us. And we have one of those items today. We have one item that's a proposal for the revision of the election procedure. That's actually been presented to us by the mayor. I'm going to ask staff to give us some brief notes on that, preferably through our attorney if possible. And then the next item will be is the issue concerning a COVID vaccine mandate, which is also a community initiative that's going through the process, and et cetera, et cetera. That'll be it. Now for item A on discussion, the revision of the election procedure as recommended by the mayor.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'll go ahead and give the
Remember, the
commission-
mayor is a citizen American too, so.
Exactly. I'll give the commission an overview of what staff has received. A little while back, the county attorney's office provided us with a note from the mayor with a specific recommendation concerning Section 605 of the Charter. 605 of the Charter is titled Nonpartisan Elections, but it addresses a couple related matters relating to that. In particular, his comments were directed to election procedures. Basically, as it's laid out right now within the charter, and I'm sorry to get into the weeds, but I want to give you all a little bit of background to understand how this works. As of right now, if more than 2 candidates qualify to run for county commission, then, so when we say more than 2, we mean 3 or more, right? Then the first election is held at the primary election. Most of you all who have been involved in county elections in one form or another are familiar with this way it goes. If it comes to be that one of those candidates receives more than 50% at that election, the election is over and that individual wins. If none get 50% at the August primary election, it moves on. The 2 top vote getters go on to the November election. What the mayor requested in his note, and I'll go ahead and read it to you, and then I'll try to tease out some of the pieces here. I believe Section 605, nonpartisan elections, needs modifying if a candidate receives 50% or more of the votes, in making it clear that they are the winner during primary elections. So as a practical matter, your prior experience may tell you, well, we always have our elections in August, and then it goes on, and if nobody gets over 50%, it goes to the November election. However, if it's actually the case that there are only 2, not 3 or more, 2 individuals filed to run, the actual election goes to the November ballot, okay, under our charter. You will find, as a practical matter, that doesn't happen very often. And I can't get into the potential machinations behind it, but I would share that it seems to commonly be that individuals file as write-in candidates. The county attorney's office back in 2002 interpreted this provision to find that write-in candidates counted as candidates for the purposes of bumping an election to the August election. All right? So it comes to be as a general matter that almost all the elections we have go August, and if nobody gets majority, November. Now, I will tell you, mathematically, if you have 2 individuals on the ballot and then a write-in, almost always, if there's only 2 on the ballot, someone's going to get over 50%, and that is what you see as a practical matter often. What I believe, and I say what I believe because I've inquired of the county attorney's office, and we don't have it much deeper, and staff would be glad to dig into the further particulars on it. I think the clarification the mayor is seeking is simply to make it such that regardless of whether there is a write-in candidate or anything like that, if there are even two candidates in the election, that you would have a first election in August. If somebody gets over 50%, it's done then, and otherwise it proceeds forward. I believe that's the clarification that the mayor is seeking in this. I will note, by the way, and there has been historically a great deal of correspondence between the county, the Supervisor of Elections Office, and the Division of Elections concerning this particular point. This process for nonpartisan elections is different than the process for nonpartisan elections for example, school board members. When it comes to school board members, it's very similar, except Chapter 105 of the Election Code says if it's over 2 candidates who are on the ballot, excluding write-ins. So you have variations in different instances here. The county attorney's office and the Supervisor of Elections office has nevertheless applied the charter as the county attorney has interpreted it. So I believe that's the clarification the mayor is seeking. We would be glad to seek further clarification from the mayor as to precisely which direction he was looking to go, but that's some background of what we're looking at in that section.
Okay, well, thank you. Just for clarification, if one of the candidates receives 50% of the vote, there would be no November election.
That's correct.
That's the result of the change. Okay, I see we have one person that's queued in to speak, Mr. O'Neill, but I'm going to ask that we do it a little bit differently. That we do treat this the same way we treated the transportation issue, that you bring back some recommendations as to exactly what the clarification is, and then we place it on the agenda for discussion at our very next meeting. And Mr. O'Neill, if you will let us do that, I think that'll be more efficient.
Could you run that past me again, sir?
In other words, I'm going to have staff get clarifications from the presenter, which would be Mayor Demings and his staff, and then let them review it and bring it back to our meeting next week for a full discussion, because we really don't have enough information now to make a good decision on that. And I think it's the same way we approached the transportation issue. We didn't have enough information, so we decided to bring it back. But I think they can bring it back shorter than 2 meetings. This took 2 meetings to get the transportation issue back, but we should be able to get this back in our next meeting.
Could I can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Of the Attorney Vos. The portion of the law, is it a portion of the charter that says if for instance, in District 1, perhaps this might happen, where you have 2 candidates and then a third comes in as a write-in candidate, that it pushes the election to the August primary. Mm-hmm. Is that part of the charter?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if, Chair, if we looked at the whole thing inclusively, could we ask staff to look at every part, that part as well as the part that the mayor suggests?
I don't see any objection to that. I think what he's saying is that entire section that relates to the elections, that we review it in context rather than just reviewing that one piece of language. I think it's going to be the same result.
Chairman, let me be. Yeah. I want to be really clear with what I'm being asked, because member, I believe what you just laid out, the matter of whether what pushes it to August, whether it's August or November and so on, is pretty much precisely what I just discussed. Yes. So I didn't see a distinction as to the subject matter.
Yeah, what I'm inquiring is, if we were to form a committee, could that committee change the part of the charter that enables one candidate to coax a write-in candidate into a primary to push so that primary would decide who the commissioner is? Am I losing you on that?
Yeah.
Member O'Neill?
Yeah.
Actually, the discussion that we're having now is exactly the discussion that I was trying to postpone. it's really a very, very complex issue. It looks simple on the outset. You're just pushing an election forward, but there are really quite a few questions that has to be answered. But if you'll give me the liberty to get it to staff, I promise you we can have as lengthy a discussion as we like on it at our very next meeting. But it'll be much clearer and much easier for us, because I don't have all the answers, and I can tell from the attorney's response that he's being very deliberate in his statement, and that's we usually don't have that. We usually say yeah or nay and move forward. So let's, if you really want to have the discussion, I will be glad to continue it. But my recommendation would be that we get clarity on this and bring it back for a full discussion.
As you wish, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Now I don't want you to think that I'm cutting you off, but I'm recommending that we get clarity on it. I only see one other person, that was Mr. Batchelor. Would you agree to that, or do you have comments now?
I've got, if it's going to be given to staff, I've got questions for the staff to entertain too. I'd like for them, frankly, it might require a workshop, but I'd like to know the opinion of the supervisor of election. I'd like to know the opinion of the division of elections. I'd like to know the voter turnout in the primary versus general, because in my opinion, the public deserves to cast the most amount of votes in the general for a candidate that's going to represent them.
Yes.
And then lastly, I want to be sure that this does not impede an opportunity for a write-in candidate or further restrict anybody's ability to run for office who's not well funded. So there's a lot of questions. I agree.
Yeah, the chair would agree with those comments as well.
I'm sorry?
The chair would agree with those comments as well.
So maybe we could ask staff if they would address some of those questions, and or if it ends up to needs to be a workshop on it, we can do a workshop on it at the committee level. But those are my concerns.
Thank you.
Just a few.
And Member Callan, thank you. I agree with
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, the thing I want to make for staff is that the current charter says a candidate who has qualified for any single office under the charter. And the qualification generally occurs, you have to file, in June and all that. I don't think write-in candidates qualify. I may be wrong.
The county attorney's office has disagreed and right.
Well, I'm just, because if they qualified, they wouldn't be a write-in candidate. They'd be on the ballot.
I appreciate your legal argument. I'm not the county attorney.
So I don't want to. So maybe there is some cleanup to be done here, but I don't think this does what about the write-in candidate is what it is. The fact is that make it clear that 50% is required to be elected at a position under the charter. Need some cleanup here, so I look forward to it, Mr. Chairman. But I want to make that clear on the record. I don't think it deals with the write-in issue. I think there's some question about that.
Yeah, the chair would agree with that comment as well. I just want to double back one more. Mr. Grammer.
Yeah, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to ask a procedural question for clarification. Because this proposal is on our agenda for this evening, under our bylaws, do we need to take any sort of vote tonight, whether that just be a vote to table the proposal to a next meeting? Do we have to take a vote? Is that in our bylaws if it's on the agenda?
No, I'll ask the staff, but no, we do not have to take a vote. We have to discuss it.
Okay. I'll just make sure we're acting
just to double back,
consistently.
Mr. O'Neill, are you comfortable with that approach of just waiting, or do you have more comments?
Mr. Chair, I'm always...
Enjoy this board. We enjoy each other's fellowship, too. Yes.
I just want to ask one question, because I'm a little slow. They said, is it on? Right. I just want to ask one question. I'm a little bit slow. They said 50%. I thought it was 50 plus 1 to win, not just 50. Am I correct?
It's 50% plus 1 in any event.
Oh, because he kept saying 50.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask for liberty to end debate on that and get it back to us at our next meeting. Is
it's
that
50 plus 1.
Okay, thank you. We're going to end debate and go to item number 2.
Chair, just to provide a little bit of clarification and to the member's point, I'd heard about the additional information, from the division, from the supervisor, from all of this. If I can make a suggestion, it may make sense that would be a great set of investigation to go into down the line a little bit if it were of interest to the CRC. I would suggest, just for the purposes of getting a handle on precisely the change that the mayor is proposing, you can come back at the next meeting. I can provide you that information.
Yes.
And that will enable you all to see a little bit further as to the precise direction you may need to go, and then could inquire down all those lines, because then you know what you're asking about.
Yes, thank you. When they agree with you, just stop. All right. No further discussion, and we go to the final proposed item, which is the creation of a COVID vaccine mandate to create a COVID vaccine mandate restitution fund. And who is the presenter on that? Please come forward. You get a second bite at the apple. No, please. From the podium.
Thank you. So
explain who you are and
okay.
Your issues
So
for the
Chris
public.
Messina, citizen of Orange County. I also was the runner-up in the last cycle for the Orange County mayor's race, and I am very concerned that we had a period of really what I consider and many people consider constitutional overreach, and so a lot of people were injured. They were forced out of jobs. They were forced to take a medical procedure that they did not want to take, which is a constitutional violation. And I believe we have a responsibility to make these people whole. And so that's really the essence of it. And so in consultation with a number of folks, we came up with a 0.5% of the budget. We think for 1 year that we think this is an adequate amount to compensate these folks. And I'm sure many of you know there are actually a number of lawsuits that have been filed regarding this. And I think it's time we put this to bed. We put this issue to bed, we resolve it, and then we also resolve never to do that again as a county. And the reason it's coming here to you, to the Charter Review Committee, is because because the Board of County Commissioners instituted this with the support and the motivation of the mayor. It's not they're really fundamentally incapable of correcting it. So we believe it needs to be corrected by the Charter Review Commission.
Thank you. Any further comments?
No, but I'm happy to answer questions on it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any discussion from the board? Please, you can please stand up in case
Sure.
there are questions. Any discussion from the board? I'm sorry. Chair Shara?
Yes. Vice Chair. I don't want to be chair.
Shows you how excited I am.
2 questions. Number
Sure.
1, I would like concurrency of the board to have the county attorney and any correspondence with the mayor's office distributed to the board members, so we can keep up with what's going on. And finding no objection, approve. Okay. And the second one, based on what you were talking about in terms of the compensation.
Yeah.
Before we even enter into that situation, I think you need to present a paper that outlines exactly what you want, because we're talking about the county employees, and the county commissioners voted in a certain way to require them to get injections, and it caused a problem. We're seeing that nationwide now.
Yep.
So I think, to present us something so we can
pro forma
agitate on
budget
it,
of
and then we'll make a decision whether we want to bring
Sure.
it up or not. I think that would be an appropriate thing
Sure.
for you to
Thank
do.
you. Will do.
Thank you.
For the sake of the records, there were two documents attached to our agenda.
On that issue?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That wasn't long enough.
Member Batchelor?
Yeah, just a couple of questions, and to follow up, and not to make Chairman Sharon nervous, but I'm going to agree with him. So, Mike, I don't even get it. You want to spend 5% of the county budget?
No. 0.5%.
0.5.
So if you look at the 23-24 budget, which is 6.7 million, then we're looking at approximately $34 million.
My question is, and I'll just leave it to you, I'd like to see something very specific, the money, the amount of money, how many years, the process one uses to apply for that money if it were allocated, how they prove they were affected.
Sure.
We heard some consternation today in the audience about federal programs, and PPP did some of that, but it's already been audited, and there are hundreds of billions of dollars in fraud associated with that one program alone. So I don't get it. I would look forward to your presentation, but the one thing I have to have is a fiscal note, because I don't get the philosophical approach.
So there's a de facto cap in this proposal. Second part of it is that it calls for an oversight board of 5 individuals appointed by the Surgeon General, Florida Surgeon General, who have no financial ties to Orange County. Yeah.
No, I'm out. That guy's nuts.
Okay.
But go ahead, please.
Hey, open to another suggestion.
Okay, go ahead. I'll take it. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. My apologies. You can tell me
it's okay.
the other 4.
Yeah. No, I realized you had an emotional reaction to the gentleman, but it could be another non-interested party. That's the premise here, is that we need a board, an oversight board. It could be some of you, folks who do not have financial interests with Orange County need to oversee this.
Let the record show that those were Member Batchelor's comments and his comments alone.
Yeah, he's out of order again. Sorry, it's late. I'm sorry.
No, you were actually in order then.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
I do understand this, and I think we're in a position to take a vote up or down as to whether we want to proceed it to committee. Unless there are some comments from other board members, I'm going to ask for I can't see any. I don't see anyone. Everyone.
Scroll down. You can scroll your screen scrolls.
Your finger.
Oh, yep. There we are.
I just learned that.
It's all right.
Okay. Now I have no idea what order these are in, so I'm just going to start from the top. Rishi? Member Rishi?
Sorry, I'm trying to. I think some folks have to. I'm on now. Thank you so much. And thank you, Mr. Messina, for your proposal. I greatly appreciate it. I just had actually a really quick question, because this is really just for my education, and as we are going to be probably bringing in the county attorney or some of those folks to discuss this, I was not familiar with the claims. I think you mentioned there's a few lawsuits pending right now in reference to this issue. Just out of curiosity, as we analyze this, are these tort claims? Are they negligence claims? Are they employment law claims? I'm just wondering if you have any idea.
It's actually a combination of all those.
Of all those.
So, yeah. So nice to see you again, too.
Yeah, good to see you, too. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to go down. Member Grimmer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Messina, for bringing us this proposal here tonight.
Yes, thank you.
I think Rich kind of mentioned my main question is for our attorney, Mr. Vos, about the legalities of this as proposed. I know we've had extensive discussions when it comes to other items about actions that the CRC would take that that would try to control the county commission budget in some way. So that stood out for me, the number one as a potential issue, and I was curious to hear our attorney's thoughts on that issue.
Thank you, Member Staccato.
That was the question I was going to ask the council. Do we have the legal ability to direct money from the commission? Because I think it's policy, but we can't tell them to spend money.
Member Callen?
The county budget is about 15 different buckets. You got the fire MSTU, you got the sheriff MSTU, MSBU, you got the public utilities, you got the tourist development tax. So I think there needs to be more specified which budget you're talking about. The general revenue money, ad valorem money, what part of the budget, because there's many sources of revenue that's in a $6 billion budget.
So take that as a follow-on item. Thank you.
I think that'd be something to look at. Maybe Phil Diamond website publishes the reports on the consolidated financial statements. Maybe go take a look at and see what they collect per year.
Thank you. Member O'Neill.
This question is directed to school board member Gold. Just as a matter of policy, does Orange County require school children to have any particular vaccination before entering public school?
The short answer is yes. There are opt-out options, for religious and medical approved issues, but the short answer is yes. In the public health interest, they are recommended.
And for Mr. Messina, and thank you for bringing this to our attention, just for my own edification.
Sure.
I've been to Board of County Commissioners meetings, and certainly you represent a very passionate constituency. But as the school board does, they require school children to have vaccinations, or that these county employees were required to have this vaccination. There was no opt-out other than resigning from the fire department, et cetera.
That's essentially it. And also I should note that the experimental COVID vaccine is not on the mandatory school vaccine schedule.
Yeah, I was just using it as an analogy. Does the county government require vaccinations in some circumstances? They allow for opt-outs, but in this case, you're saying, and you want this fund to go to people who lost their job or who had health impacts, injuries?
Yeah, both.
Okay, because there are also people who are injured by vaccine, children that are injured by vaccines. In rare cases, I mean, there's always that 0.0 whatever % that are injured by vaccinations. Not that I'm not anti-vaccination. I'm just saying you always have a percentage whenever you come out with a vaccine that are going to be injured by it.
Right. Which is why it should be a free and fair choice.
Okay.
Thank you. Member Nguyen.
Yes. Hi, Mr. Messina. Thanks for your presentation. You said you wanted 0.05.
0.5.
$0.5 to go to those 5%, whatever, to go to the people. Do you know how many people there were injured? Do you have an accounting of how many people you're talking about serving and how much money they're going to get each?
Yeah, so we know it's several hundred.
No. I mean, several hundred can be 500, 900.
So that's a level of detail that Mr. Chera asked and Vice Chair Chera asked, and I'll be happy to work to bring to the next meeting.
Yeah, because if you're just going to blanket give folk money, but we don't know who, I mean, because some people are injured differently from other folk. So I was just wondering if you have any kind of analyzation of those things. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's a valid request. Thank you.
Thank you. That clears the board. Is there anyone else that would like to have comments? Seeing none, I'm going to.
Mr. Messina, I don't see this as a charter issue. The charter is very specific. We don't have jurisdiction over the county's budget, and you're asking us to set aside or have the county set aside 0.5% of the current budget, which was approved several weeks ago. The fiscal year began October 1st, so you're really looking at probably the 2024 budget, right? I would direct you to the Florida legislature. If there's anything that's going to happen with reimbursements or any type of allowances for individuals that were impacted through the vaccine mandates, the legislature will probably be the first to act. And I'm sure that other counties may have similar issues in Florida. So I would just direct you to start at the legislature. Session begins on January 9th, and maybe you can talk to a couple of your local representatives and see if there's any appetite to bring this up as a bill and then maybe the counties across Florida could then act based on what the legislature decides. But I don't see this as an Orange County charter issue.
Well, with all due respect, Mr. De La Portilla, Orange County kind of stood alone in terms of the vaccine mandates within Florida. Most of Florida, the vast majority of Florida, did not seek to impose these kinds of mandates. And so,
thank you,
therefore,
sir. You've actually made your point. We kind of get that part.
Okay.
Thank you. Member Prophet, were you on the? Okay, thank you. Our final person on the queue is Member Callan.
You also got some sovereign immunity.
And then Angel, are you back on?
No, I'm sorry.
I agree with Angel's comments, but you also got some sovereign immunity issues, and I think it may set a unwise precedent of the charter delving into stuff like this.
And that, as for comments from the chair, it clearly is government expansion, and I don't know if that's what we should do. And it borders on being administrative more than policy. The policy would probably be something like the county agrees to mandates for any type of vaccine damage, but that would be going too far for this committee. So the chair would think that it's overreach, government expansion, and too administrative for what we're doing. With that in mind, if there are no further questions, I'll ask for a motion to either. I would ask for
Second.
I will ask for a motion to either accept or reject this proposal for committee. No. We're good. We're good with that. Is there a motion to either?
So this is a member Prophet. I'd make a motion that we reject it from the committee.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Member Nguyen.
Motion, please.
The motion maker.
The motion on the floor is to reject the proposed charter review topic.
And the second is the same. We're now open for discussion on the motion. Yes. Question from Member Shara, Chairman, Vice Chair Shara.
It's time to throw this because John for me, forget it. I think, he's got a point. We got a bunch of employees, and in Orange County is probably one of the few, if not the only one, that mandated it at the legislative, at the county commission. And I would suggest that, irregardless of what happens here, you can always, send in a request to the board, and we'll discuss it at that time. But again, and I think you got a point, and we got employees out there that are hurt, and if we had the county commission and the mayor, dictated it, they kind of accept the responsibility where our governor did not, and that's why we're in a positive position in this state. That's my opinion.
And my opinion, while it does have some merit, because there are some people that benefited and some people that believe they were harmed. So your point is not too far off track. It's just that it may not be in the purview of what we can do as a CRC. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Member O'Neill?
I heard other members asking Mr. Messina for further documentation about the injuries, the number of injuries, the extent of the injuries, etc. And now we have a motion to deny this as a subject. I think that motion should come after Mr. Messina is able to present the evidence and not prior to that.
Thank you. Any further comments?
Mr. Chairman.
On the motion, Member Batchelor.
Mr. Chairman, I oppose it. I think, first of all, it's a judiciary question. There's litigation pending, number one, so we don't have the statutory ability to pass any mandate that might conflict with the judicial ruling. Secondly, I agreed with, I think it was Mr. Shara and maybe others that said that we don't have the authority, and I think council will agree to this, to put an item on the Charter Review Commission for a vote that directs any expenditures of dollars by the county commission. We don't have that statutory authority in the ordinance, in my opinion. And thirdly, while I appreciate anybody's petition to government, I've been in that business for a long time, there's a glaring omission here because over 1 million people died in this country. Over 50,000 died of COVID. 50,000 died of COVID in the state of Florida. So maybe we should consider how to compensate the families that lost a loved one to COVID. So it gets very convoluted in my mind anyway, and maybe I'm not smart enough to figure it out. This approach I would like to, if there's a litigation pending, it's in the right court, because if the court rules in your favor, for instance, if you were a litigant, then they will probably appoint an executor of sorts, to really disperse the money, not unlike 9/11 and other, the COVID, not the COVID, but the opioid crisis. The court usually appoints an executor of sorts to decide who gets money and who doesn't get money. So while I admire you petition and the local charter commission, we frankly don't have the authority, in my opinion, to do anything to direct the county commission on its budget. So that's my position, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Member Staccato.
No, I support the motion that we don't deal with this, because I don't believe we actually have the authority to do this. And luckily for you, we're actually fixing the petition process, and that might be the place you go, or to government, but to the accountants, BCC, or the legislature. I don't think we have the ability to tell the BCC to spend money in a way. So that's.
Thank you. Member Weinsberg.
Mr. Chair, I call the question for the motion on the floor.
Questions have been called. Is there a second for the question? Second. It's been seconded. Is no any discussion on the question? Seeing none, the question carries. We'll call for a vote on the main motion. All in favor of the motion signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
Who were the nays? Okay, we have 2 nays. Let them so be registered.
Chair.
Chair, it will be Vice Chair Shara and Member O'Neill.
Okay, thank you.
And we have a full, everybody's here, all 15 members. Record that Member Arias is absent, which is already in the records. Anything else? Thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you very much. Any further discussions for the good of the order? Seeing none, we entertain a motion for adjournment. So moved by Member Nguyen, seconded by Vice Chair Shower. We stand adjourned.
Chair, we do have member comments.
Correction. Correction. We really do need member comments.
Yes.
No. We really do. And we generally end our meeting with comments from members, and that serves 2 purposes. Because we don't have member dialogue with the public who are addressing the board, it gives this board a chance to address those issues and address any members that decide to stay around. So at this point, we're not going to digress from that. If there are any members that have any comments concerning any of the public hearing or anything else they'd like to bring, they generally have 2 minutes to bring those comments. And if it leads to comments from the public, then we'll bring that person back up. And then I'll have some final comments. They'll mostly be about the process of hearing the items that come out of committees. We're now open for member comments. We have Member Rashi.
Thank you. Sorry, I think someone's got to uncheck themselves. Thank you so much, and thank you for the chair. I won't take too long. I did just want to address Mr. Messina. I mean, I got to tell you that I disagree with the substance of your proposal, but I'm very thankful for you bringing it forward. And I actually do agree with Member O'Neill in conceptually that even if it's a proposal I disagree with, we should try to set it to committee, because I think that's probably what this committee should be doing. That said, I think the reason I still ultimately voted to not consider it is I think that we don't have the authority, and so that's ultimately where my vote came. But I just wanted to thank you anyway, and no problem. Well, You might anyway, but that's okay. Look, I also just wanted to say that I appreciate everyone who came here and gave their comments earlier. One of the interesting things I think we've seen, because I'm happy to sit on this committee with Chair Grimmer as well, that's dealing with this rural boundary issue, is this seems to be an issue that unites everybody in the community, regardless of your party affiliation or what your thought is on everything. Everyone is concerned about development. So I just wanted to give a shout out for that committee and encourage you to come. We really have had some great discussions there. So if you can make it to the next one, it's a really great opportunity for us to hear from you. And I certainly appreciate that very much. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Member O'Neill.
Just quickly, Mr. Chair, I would like to note and thank the members as well as the audience for discussing the rural boundary. 41.6% of the speakers were in favor. If you need the exact number, 0% were in opposition. And for the banking community, and thank you for hanging in there, Mr. DeMarco. It gets to be a long meeting. Just something for you to consider. You don't have to answer this. There are so many members of this community who work as waitresses, waiters, etc., who have credit, low credit or no credit. And yet every time I go to rent a car or book a flight, the first thing they ask, what's your credit card number? Perhaps, and I would love to hear this, perhaps, privately or whatever. How does a person who works at Disney World or works at Miller's Ale House who has low credit, how do they get their foot on the first rung of being a productive citizen? If you can't get a credit card, if you can't establish yourself at least through the normal banking system, and I appreciate that you're reducing risk through the banking system, but who's going to take the risk on those people? You're nodding your head in agreement. So I hopefully that point resonates, and perhaps we can talk about it after the meeting.
Thank you. Member Staccato.
2 points and a little talk. Things I'm going to be bringing forward is economic forecasting committee I'm going to propose in the future, because after the TDT, the council, to me, seemed like they needed a lot more independent data. There is no independent data. Forecasting, the economic forecasting of the county doesn't really exist. They can't project if something is actually going to work. And we're relying on the people who are trying to get the money to give us the data. I don't think that's a good place to get it. The other thing is, in the future, probably in December, I'll be bringing forward something that is a one water holistic approach of Orange County codes using as a minimal to protect the water sheds and basin protection, including municipalities using Section 704. So we don't have issues like filling in Lower Wekiva wetlands without the county looking at too. The final thing is about, we talked about it, in the previous charter, and this is something you'd asked about, Chair, what we had brought forward in 2020, typically to the full committee, is out of committees, we would bring the title, the 75-word statement, and also the actual language. So it was a complete set of data. Certainly the commission itself can change anything, but that was one of the products we had to get out, because a small group of people coming up with that is much better than 15 people, because you're not going to get a solution if you try that. So that was a major product. That is the ultimate product of a committee, is that the requirements of the title, the ballot language that is before the citizens, and finally the actual charter. And the commission, of course, reserves the right to change anything, but that's the minimum that we give to the commission.
Thank you. Member Callan.
One question on the transportation issue. I have come up with a concept on transportation following up what the board did on the sales tax. There was an oversight committee, And I'm tinkering with making that a charter commission similar to the P&Z and the BZA, that any expenditure of county dollars except for developer money funded road projects has to go to a committee that's appointed by the board, and all projects are heard at the same time during the months of March and April for the upcoming budget cycle. And I've come up with some language with that. And the reason why I've done that is because back when this polled, the sales tax polled 10% better having this committee. And so, and so having an oversight by citizens, review what's going on, so citizens voting for, let's say, a sales tax again in the future can have a certainty that there's some independent, non-staff, non-lobbyist, non-county commission folks looking over the numbers and making a recommendation to the board for the budget cycle. So I have some kind of language that have been suggested by others. I've come about. It's a first draft. It's not very good. If the chair would mind, I'd like to give it to our attorney.
Thank you. I think that would be great.
Okay. And then the other point I wanted to bring up was thank you for your comments on term limits. I just have a different view on term limits. And I came to that being around here for a long time, listening to commissioners complain about not getting projects done within 2 terms and issues like that. And I think it's important that when you have term limits like we have, then staff and lobbyists control the process more than elected officials, especially with budget. So I just want to make it clear. I've heard your comments about term limits. I will be happy to discuss how I got to that point in my discussion on term limits, because I was one time for them. I'm still for term limits. I just think 2 is too little. Thank you.
Thank you. And for the Member Weinsberg and Member Batchelor.
I just quickly wanted to thank Commissioner for being so targeted and doing your research and giving us clear direction. It's so helpful when the commissioners share with us the parts of the charter that they really have an issue with or have reasoning behind it. And not every commissioner has done that, but we really appreciate your input today. It was very helpful for me personally. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Batchelor.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be brief in light of the lateness of the hour, but I wanted to point out 2 or 3 things of the people who testified today. Is that government in the sunshine, public meetings, public records, and lobby registration. Fortunately, Orange County has those. Obviously, the government in sunshine is a state statute, and where you cannot obviously communicate with anybody without publicly noticing that, which is a good thing because government makes a lot of decisions in Tallahassee, but that doesn't have the Sunshine Amendment out of the sunshine, and we see what the impact of that could be. The number 1. Number 2, I remember when Chairman Crotty was chairman, and he and Tom Drage, as attorney, he appointed us to write a ordinance in Orange County that requires now, which is in, if you go down to the county, it's in purpose today, that if you go to meet a county commissioner, you've got to sign in. If you're a registered lobbyist, you've got to sign in every time. And it's public, so the public has a right to know. So that theme, the public having the right to know, government of sunshine, no secret meetings, and also requiring lobbyists to register publicly and disclose who they're there to see about what's important. And the last thing I'll mention is the transportation tax. I'm going to take a liberty here. This school you're sitting in now is because of the half-penny sales tax that we passed in 2002. It was only a half a penny. It was for children. And the one thing that we did, we had a COVE committee, which was a Construction Oversight and Value Engineering Committee, chaired by Harris Rosing at the time, and some of the members are still on it. And basically, the way we went to the public is we had a list of 136 schools that were some state of disrepair that needed to be replaced, restructured in some manner, or built because of the growth. And then in 2013, Bill Sublette, who was the chairman of the school board at the time, comes back again and says, can we do this again? I said, oh my God, let's do it again. We did it again, and the public voted almost 70% in favor. You know why? Because they saw the evidence of what the half a penny did. And the 2 taxes combined over 23 years raised $4.5 billion to build new schools in Orange County, and this is one of them here that you're seeing now. I say that in juxtaposition to the sales tax for transportation, which I knew was going to lose, because at number 1, it was polling at 58%. Well, if you're polling at 58%, you're dead. The negatives go up always, and the positives go down always in the poll, and Scott, you can probably attest to that. Number 2, they were asking for a full penny. Number three, they were asking for 30 years. If they'd asked for a half a penny in 10 years to let us prove ourselves and then build some infrastructure, transportation projects, not unlike schools, so people could see, oh yeah, they're spending the money the right way. Come back in 10 years and say, how do we do? Give us an extension. But when you ask for $6 billion over 30 years without a revisit by the voters, there's a problem. So I'll be glad to chat and give you some input on that. But anyway, I'm not opposed to it. I just think the public wants, particularly in today's political environment, we can all agree to this, you better prove yourself. You better be prepared to prove yourself in today's political environment that, yes, we'll spend this money for this exact thing, and here's the list on the website. And if we didn't build 138 schools, the second time we came back, the public would vote it down. So anyway, so Mr. Chairman, those are the remarks. But the last thing I have asked, if you would ask the General Counsel, a lot of stuff has come up about concurrency and what we can and can't do and what needs to be done. Could we have a summary of how much latitude does the county have in lieu of the legislature preempting state government on growth management? So I'd like to know what latitude we have if we decide to advance a charter amendment because the legislature has passed so many pieces of legislation preempting local government. So if we could ask council to give us the parameters in which we could work if we saw the need to have a charter amendment dealing with growth management or something related to that.
Okay, thank you. Would that be different from the report that he gave us a couple of meetings back with the legislature?
Yeah, it might be. Let me ask the chair, if I might, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask council, it might have been included in the first report where we asked him to talk about any legislation that passed that preempted any local government action. So if it's part of that report, I stand corrected, and I'll just go back and read the report.
Sure, and Chairman, I'd be glad to address that. So the report I provided you earlier on in your process was directed to all of the preemptive actions that the legislature had taken just in that last session, not all of them that they've taken over, say, the last 75 to 100 years. As I also mentioned at one of your earlier meetings, the whole question of what areas of legislation has the legislature preempted in some grand overview is another one of the books I plan to write in the next couple of years. The matter more generally, I would suggest to you is it comes down to tools, all right? And one of the committees that you have right now in your Sustainable Growth Committee is looking at a number of those tools that are employed in other county charters, all right? And that's two main tools that are going on there, but they're being applied in a land use context. One is, as we heard from the commissioner before, the power under the Florida Constitution for county ordinances to prevail over municipal ordinances. That is a great power when applied in the context of land use, and has been done by charter counties all over the state. Another is setting certain thresholds for voting for certain actions. Again, when applied in a land use circumstance, very general tool, but when applied in a land use context, it becomes a tool that a number of charter counties have used. When you get into the particulars of trying to say in the county charter, this area of the state will have a future land use of X and always will, that has been preempted. When you try to dictate a comprehensive plan designation by charter, legislature preempted that years ago. But when you get into the tools of decision making, that is where you can have a lot of land use effect. So you can have a lot of addressing of land use in your charter, but really when it comes down to decision making tools and which rules prevail. When you get into the weeds of the land development regulations will say this and they'll say this, that's going to be out of bounds.
Thank you. Member Batchelor, did that address your concern?
For as much as we're paying him, I'm satisfied.
Okay, I'm going to cut my my comments very short. Here's what I'll be recommending between now and our next meeting. I'm going to recommend that we have an agenda item that discuss how we move forward with items coming out of committees.
one of the things that I'll be doing is going over how previous CRCs handle those items as they were returned. And I'm thinking about the process of compacting our meetings in January and February. So instead of having them once a month, we'll probably have bi-weekly meetings to go through those items. And staff can correct me on this, but I think we're required by statute to have public hearings once we've just voted on items to go to the ballot. Is that correct?
We're going to be having them towards the end. And
Yes, that's what I so it'll include a schedule as to how we will do that, and also we're going to start to compressing the committees as well. I'm going to be asking the committees to start to bring it into the to bring it into the finish line, so we don't carry this thing all carry it out all the way to June. So I don't have to discuss those things unless there's some disagreement with them. But the big picture is that I want to research how previous committees, CRCs, handle those items, and I want to compress our meetings in January and February, and then we'll work the schedule out between staff and the board members. Any objections to that?
Mr. Chair.
I think, Mr. Chairman, I would like to see you give us a written proposal.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Mr. Chair, I believe at the first meeting, I suggested that we vote on these charter amendments after the legislative session ends. Because if we vote on them prior to the end of the legislative session, all our work could well be for naught.
I think that was one of the suggestions that I had made earlier, but I've now come to the realization that whoever is governor can call a special session and do whatever the hell they want. So I think that we just do whatever they choose is best for the
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
people of Florida.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
could you?
He's going to be governor a while longer. So.
Chair
Mr. Chair, could you write that in the form of a proposal and submit it to us?
No. I think we should now stop and vote on the motion to adjourn, which was made and seconded. We have a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. We stand adjourned.